you don't have to be a trained sniper. You can be a hunter, let's say. And if the government story is to be believed, is that Lee Oswald, who hadn't picked up a rifle for 4 years, took a rifle to work in pieces and put it together and didn't dry fire it, didn't sight the rifle in, and was able to pull off world-class marksmanship in 5.5 seconds. 3 shots, 2 hits, and 1 miss of a moving vehicle with a moving target inside of it. And I can sit here and tell you from my professional experience, I couldn't have done that. There's no way I could have done, and I couldn't have done it. I never would have chosen a crappy 6.5 millimeter Italian World War II surplus shooting gun to do that with a scope that was not even aligned for the rifle. It's a fantasy. It's the biggest lie ever, that it could not have been done.
Beverly has graciously, she was a singer at the Abe Weinstein's Colony Club. And when Abe wasn't there, and Jack was Ruby, was a little short-handed, she came over there and helped out a little bit. She was a singer, and still is, and she's going to sing us a song.
I tell you, he's a character, isn't he? Yeah, we kind of like him a little bit. If I was ever going to sing a song that's more appropriate than today in this song, I wouldn't know what it was. It's been very hard to hum on all of us, I think. But I'll always be holding that flame up for my past president as long as I can hold it up. To God be the glory. And I'm sorry I don't have music. If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start all over with my family and my life, I'd thank my lucky stars to be living here today. The flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. I'm proud to be an American where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died and gave that right to me. And I'll proudly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Memphis, New York to LA. There's pride in every American's heart, and it's time we stood to say, I'm proud to be an American where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died and gave that right to me. And I'll proudly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. I'm proud to be an American where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died and gave that right to me. And I'll proudly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. Again, my name is Brian Edwards. I'm a former law enforcement officer with 21 years of experience. I worked as a police officer. I worked in, I was a field training officer, fraud investigator, accident investigator, and I taught in the police academy. I retired, and I don't want to do that again. That job is done. What I'm going to talk to you tonight about is from a tactical perspective. And one of the things that I've always prided myself on is that I can talk about the tactics, about how this all went down. I'm not going to be able to give you who they are or who was behind it, but I can tell you from experience how the tactics would have been set up. And we'll have plenty of time for questions, and I want to make sure that you understand that you can ask me anything about the tactical part of it. I've been researching this since 1969. I've read over 300 or 400 books, and I collect books. I speak at conferences. I'm a co-writer of 2 books on the assassination. So I've pretty much devoted my entire life to researching and studying the Kennedy assassination. I guess it could be worse. I could have another addiction about something else. My wife said, after this book, you've got some things to do around the house. So this will be my, not swan song, but it'll be a couple years before I start another one. Well, anyway, let's get into it. My law enforcement experience, I just gave you that. I was also a senior member of our department's tactical team. See if I can make it work. Okay, there it is. I was the first goofball in the door. I was on the entry team, and I was behind the bunker, the ballistic bunker, and this is one of our training exercises. I did that for about 7 years, and then I graduated, I guess it would be the right term, to the counter sniper team. And I was on the sniper team until I retired. And my wife can attest to the fact that once I got my rifle, I slept with it the first night. You know, like was it Full Metal Jacket when the guys are laying in the bunk? You know, this is your weapon, and this is my weapon, and nobody else can have it. So I went from kicking in doors to looking through scopes. In 2018, I was asked to be a witness for the defense at the University of Houston's law school for Lee Harvey Oswald's case. It was a mock trial. And I was able to present several scenarios where this weapon that the government says was used to kill President Kennedy, the 6.5 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano Italian carbine that shot World War II surplus ammunition, killed President Kennedy with absolute pristine marksmanship capabilities. That's my weapon. I've never fired it. I will never fire it because I don't want to die. This was the most, the Italians made this rifle for the infantry in World War I. And it was the safest rifle ever made by any manufacturer because it never shot and never killed anybody it was aimed at. There was stories that we've heard over the years that the American soldiers, when they liberated Italy, found thousands of these in the battlefield right next to the dead Italian riflemen. The bolt would fly back and kill the person who was firing it. That's how bad these things were made. But yet, according to the government, Lee Harvey Oswald decided that that's the rifle he was going to use to shoot President Kennedy. So, and in 2019, I was asked to assist, that's really not their word, but to participate in the Oliver Stone's Through the Looking Glass, JFK Revisited. And he was gracious enough to fly my wife and I up to Washington, and we spent a week up there. And we, if you haven't seen the film, it's very well done. Not because I'm in it, but I am. Oliver Stone basically went out and got other experts to rebut some of the controversy about his movie JFK. So there's 17 minutes I'm in it. So just a little plug there. And there's the nervous Brian standing next to Mr. Stone. So that was kind of fun. One of those 12-minute parts of your life you'll never get back, but it was an exciting time to be there. So he did a good job. All right. So on Friday, the 22nd of November, 1963, 60 years will be this year, the 60th anniversary of the assassination of President Kennedy. At 12:30 Central Standard Time, President Kennedy was shot. Now, these are just a few of the photographs, and I'm trying to put it together so that you can just see the thumbnail sketch of the assassination. Photographs of the limousine in Dealey Plaza and the aftermath. The headlines the following day. I was 7 years old at the time. I didn't know what a president was. I was too busy throwing rocks at cars across the street from where I live or playing football or whatever. And my parents collected a lot of the newspapers. It was an important historic event. I didn't know anything about it. But I remember being in school that day, and the principal came on the intercom and told everybody in the school that President Kennedy had been shot in Texas, and we're going to close the school down. That's what I remember. I got a free Friday. I went home, played all weekend out in the yard. But when I walked in the door, my mother was crying. I didn't understand why she was crying. I thought something happened to my father. And she said, no, President Kennedy's been shot. Oh, great, I'm going to go outside and play. That's all I remember. But I do remember when my parents bought that, I don't know what happened to this kid, but he's gone, but that's me. My parents bought the Kansas City Star had put out this hardback coffee table book, as you might want to call it. It's called The Torch Is Passed. And I sat there and read that. There wasn't a lot of text in the book. There were a lot of pictures of the funeral, a lot of pictures of Mrs. and Mr. Kennedy, and President Kennedy and Mrs. Kennedy and the kids and all that. But I remember specifically seeing a full page when you open up the book. There's a full page picture of the riderless horse and the military officer with the case on. I thought, that's pretty cool. I didn't know then that it would take me down a rabbit hole for 45 years. But I still have that book. It's a picture book, but it's important because it stayed with me in my little 7-year-old head. So in 1969, when I was in junior high school, we had to do a book report. And Mark Lane's book, Rush to Judgment, had just come out. Well, actually, it came out in '66, but I picked it up for the first time. It was the first book I ever paid for by myself, and I read cover to cover. I still have that book, and it's held together with a big spring clip and a rubber band, because if I took that off, it would just go everywhere. But my parents had bought a copy of the Warren Report, and I sat down and I started reading parts of that. And I thought to myself, well, that doesn't jive with what Mark Lane said. Now, that's interesting why one guy would say the government was wrong. He didn't come out and say, you're wrong, but they just said, this is an opposing view of what are the things that you didn't do, Mr. and Mrs. Government people. So I wrote a book report. Side by side, I compared these two books, 50 pages, handwritten, both sides of the page. This is before computers. And I turned it into my teacher, and she said, what the hell is this? I said, it's my book report. She said, well, I'm not reading that. Well, why did you write such a big book? Well, because it's an important story. Never did get that back. And that book, Rush to Judgment, opened up the floodgates of all these other books. And specifically, the books that you should get if you don't already have is this one right here, this one, if you can find it for under $2,000, and this one, written by my good friend J. Gary Shaw. Those are the books you should start with. And then graduate up to some of these, and then some of these. Some of the other books, they're all great. Every one of them, the interesting part is every one of these says there was a conspiracy involved in the president's murder. There's only about a handful of books out on the market today that say Oswald was the one who did it, and he did it by himself. The disparity of the numbers between these book authors, nobody's writing a book about there was no conspiracy. Every book that comes out seems to have an angle. It's a conspiracy. And hopefully by the end of the program, if you're not convinced, I'm not trying to convince you. You believe what you want to believe. I believe there was a conspiracy. I believe there was multiple shooters shooting at President Kennedy. And I believe there was a conspiracy to cover it up. And I believe the last conspiracy continues today, 60 years after. They're still covering it up. Why? Who are they protecting? They're protecting themselves, is what they're doing, in the entities of our government. And I remember my dad he was old school. I mean, he was a Navy veteran, and he was old school. And finally, he came to one of my presentations I did at a law school in Kansas City. And he sat there in the front row, and every once in a while I'd look over at him, and he's just staring at the screen going, why didn't we know this? You weren't supposed to know this. It takes private citizens to dig into this case when the government should have done it the day of, but they didn't do it. All right, so that's the title of my presentation, The Elm Street Ambush, a tactical analysis. Well, let's get some definitions out of the way first. What is the definition of an ambush? An ambush is a sudden, unexpected attack from a concealed position. That's exactly what happened on Elm Street. A sudden and unexpected. Those people that were there in Dealey Plaza, Beverly Oliver, I know, was not there expecting to see President Kennedy killed. Neither were the other 300 witnesses in Dealey Plaza. It was unexpected and sudden and horrific. I can't imagine what it would have been like. And the other definition is a tactical. What does tactical mean? It's a verb and an adjective, but the use of combat-style methods to obtain a specific goal characterized by ingenuity, audacity, and precision. Whoever was pulling the triggers in Dealey Plaza had done this before. They were trained. They were experts. They were used multiple times. Let me throw this question out before we get too much further. Where do we train killers in this country? Where do we get them? The military. I believe that the shooters were military trained, probably in the military, working for an entity that had this kind of capability to do. CIA, Office of Naval Intelligence, covert type workers. Project Lancer, a kill-only operation. They were not going to wound President Kennedy. They were going to kill him with extreme prejudice. He would not live to go back to Washington. If they had to die to do it, they were going to do it because things were in place that it was like the domino. Once he's dead, then we do these other things. President Kennedy was making a lot of people mad. A lot of people would probably say, yeah, well, he's got to go. And there's books out there that just list all the people he was making mad. I won't get into that, but you know who they are. So the key components to a tactical operation, again, I'm taking from my personal experience as a tactical officer, this is what we had to do every time to make sure the operation was a success. Intelligence on the target and the target and the location. What does it look like? What does it look like when we get there? What does it look like when we leave? Is it fluid? Is it stationary? Secure comms, that's communication system. You don't want anybody listening on your radio that, some guy sitting in a room with a scanner going, hey, they got an operation going on 2 blocks from here. It's a secure communication. Control the high ground. That's the key part of this assassination. They put people in high places around the Dealey Plaza. When I was a police officer, one of the cases that I remember working was we had a serial burglar. Serial burglar would break into businesses and homes, and we'd never catch him. And finally, somebody decided that, we've got to set up a perimeter around an area that we thought maybe he would go to. So sure enough, he broke into this business and he got away. And so we set up the perimeter, and everybody's looking around underneath cars and whatever it might be. I had my flashlight and I'm looking up in the trees. Oh, hi, how are you? Come on down. He hit up because nobody looks up. Dealey Plaza is the same way. Nobody looked up. And who are they looking at? The civilians in Dealey Plaza, who are they looking at? They're looking at that car with President and Mrs. Kennedy in it. They're not looking up. Overwhelming firepower, bring more guns than the other guy. That's what they did. Use of cover and concealment, and escape and evade. Those 6 tactics, those 6 components are vital for every successful operation. And we're going to talk about those in detail. So target intel. Who's our target? Now, I have to say, from here on to the rest of the program, I am going to refer to President Kennedy as the target, because there's no politics involved. It's not personal. The shooters looked at this as an assignment. He's just a target. Okay? So no disrespect for President Kennedy, but he's just a target. What's he wearing? How's he going to enter the kill zone? What do we know about him? Well, we know he's not going to run away, because he probably couldn't, but we need to know everything about this guy and where he's going to be at a specific time. At 11:40, when the president's plane landed at Love Field, there was probably somebody on a radio, a secure radio, saying, plane's landed, get ready. We'll be about 30 minutes and we'll be there. There had to be some type of communication in real time for the shooters to know where their target is coming. When's he going to be here? We have to know how he's going to arrive. Is he in a car? Or what car is he in? Where is he sitting in the car? Is he wearing a hat? Is he not wearing a hat? How do we know where he's at? Real-time updates all the way from Love Field all the way to Dealey Plaza. As soon as he got off that plane, somebody's on the radio. He's wearing a dark suit. He's not wearing a hat. Mrs. Kennedy's in a pink shirt, a pink outfit. Don't commit collateral damage by killing Mrs. Kennedy. God, they'd really feel bad then, because she wasn't the target. So as soon as he hits the ground, somebody's on the radio. As soon as he sits in that car, somebody's on the radio. He's in a car, right rear seat. What number of the car in the procession? They knew all that before he ever left Love Field. And maybe you don't know, but the day of the assassination, President Kennedy's car was moved up from the number 7 position to the number 2 position. So now there's nobody in front of him except the lead car, which is half a block away in front of them. Somebody changed the motorcade configuration, is what I'm saying. Who did that? I don't know. But it probably wasn't part of the plan. For the bad guys, it was the perfect plan. We got to move that motorcade car up. The target car has to be moved up. We don't want anybody else to get hurt. Location intel. Where is the location that we're going to kill him? Again, this is a kill-only operation. We're not going to hurt him. We're not going to wound him. We're going to kill him. But we need to know where this location is. It was predetermined where that location was going to be. They were probably going to do him at the Trade Mart. They probably had people there as a backup, but the primary location was Dealey Plaza in the open in daylight. Well, how is the roads configured? How many people are going to be in the way? What do we know about us? What do we know about the layout of the land? How big is it? How small is it? How do we get away? They knew all that before they even got there. I would bet the week or 2 weeks before, once that location was decided and they decided Elm Street was the street he was going to get shot at, they had shooters in the plaza probably pacing off distances, writing in their dope book data on previous exercise. We knew how far each thing was. We knew where we were going to be at a firing position from the Elm Street. We knew all that before he even got there. Again, these were well-trained people. Once the identification of the kill zone was made, then they start fanning out. We're going to find our firing positions. Now, understand compartmentalization. There was probably 6 or 7 teams of 2 or 3 in Dealey Plaza focused on Elm Street. Team 1 didn't know Team 2 existed. Team 2 didn't know Team 5 existed. We were just doing what we were told to do. We didn't know anybody else was going to be there. And that was the reason. We don't want everybody chatting about it. So we've got the kill zone decided. Now we got to find out where our final firing positions are going to be. Can we get in those buildings? Another tactical problem, logistics. How do we get in there? Well, if you're a stranger in the building, you might get spotted. But if you come in as an air conditioning repairman or maintenance people, you wouldn't probably raise an eyebrow. These people were that good. Or they may have had somebody on the inside. Come on in. We'll get you in the back door. Nobody will ever see you. These red dots indicate, this is my opinion only. I don't base it on all the facts, but my opinion, if I was going to set this up, this is where I'd put people. Not everybody's going to have a weapon. Some of them are spotters. But they're going to be in front, behind, and to the side of the car, the target. They have to kill him on Elm Street. Communications have to be secure and encrypted. Some of you may not know that in Fair Park in Dallas, there was a communication bunker underneath the, what was the name of it? It's called the Dallas City County Civil Defense and Disaster Coordination Point, and it's in Fair Park. And in that bunker was sophisticated government radio systems, communication systems, in case of civil defense issues or national emergencies or whatever. I believe, I believe that was the hub of the radio communication system right there in Fair Park. And Fair Park is not too far from Dealey Plaza. And it's secure radio systems. Nobody can listen in unless you have that crystal. Real-time updates of the target. Anybody on the motorcade route could have been a conspirator, could have been an observer. Maybe he was an innocent. Hey, he just passed my location. He's still in the back seat on the right. I believe that there were people in the motorcade who had a line of sight radioing that information to whoever the team leader was. That puts them right inside the motorcade. My guess, this is just my opinion, take it for what it's worth, the pilot car is suspect to me. Everybody in that car is a bad guy. They're cops, but they're bad guys. The Assistant Chief George Lumpkin is the driver. 2 detectives from homicide are in the back seat, and a guy by the name of Jack Putterbaugh a Department of Agricultural official is in the car. Why would he be there in the car? He's not a protector. He works for the Agriculture Department. His concern is agricultural in nature. But the other guy in the car is a commander of one of the military intelligence unit out of Fort Sam Houston. Was it Fort Sam Houston, Gary, or was it Dallas? Yeah, Fort Sam Houston. There was a military intelligence officer in the car. Okay, military's involved, but why is he there? And they could have very well have been radioing ahead and say, okay, we're about 2 blocks from making the turn onto Harwood, and we're here, and everything's good. We're still working. I'm just speculating. I'm just thinking somebody had to be in real-time mode to tell this information, because these guys are sitting up there with rifles, and they're waiting, and they're waiting. How long are they going to have to wait? How fast is the car moving? Tell us where it's at. This is a photograph taken from a high elevation of the motorcade. Anybody in that crowd could have been a spotter. Anybody who had access to, show up at the motorcade and just watch him pass by. Excuse me. This is the motorcade. Look at all the people. They're squeezing in to the car. And one of the Secret Service agents said there was 15 to 20 people deep everywhere until they got to Dealey Plaza. But I'm thinking anybody that can see the limousine, there's the limousine right up here. Anybody can see a limousine could be radioing the information. Control of the high ground. High ground is better than the low. Shooting from high to low is difficult. In fact, it's the second most difficult shot to make, because you have to consider 7 different factors: wind, direction, speed, elevation, drop, humidity, temperature, and rotation. Believe it or not, rotation of the earth are all factors that have to be considered on the fly before you pull the trigger shooting from high to low. You have to lead at a certain distance. Next time you're in Washington, D.C., when you stand at the White House on the South Lawn, give a wave to the guys up on the roof. They love that. They're looking at you. I had a friend that was working with the Secret Service. He wasn't a sniper, but he was on the Secret Service detail for George Bush Jr., and he was stationed on the roof a lot of times with binoculars about that long. He's scanning the crowd. But they love it when you wave to them. They do that. Real-world examples of the use of high ground, and we've all heard it in the news for the last 10 years. There was a guy up in a building or something. Specifically, I'm taking you back a few years. 1960, Austin, Texas, the sniper shooter up in the Charles Whitman up in the tower at the campus at Austin. He had a 360-degree view for a quarter of a mile, unobstructed. He killed 39 people in an hour, wounded over 50 in an hour with a high-powered rifle. How do you defend against that? You shoot up at him? That's not going to do any good. There's a view from one side of that tower. A commanding view. Overall, he can see everything. Anybody that moves is a target. 360 degree for a quarter of a mile. If you were in that zone, pray that you didn't get shot. Mandalay Bay, 2017, Stephen Paddock. This wacko was out of his mind. He made 9 trips to this suite on the 32nd floor with suitcases and they weren't gun bags, but they were big bags. You would think somebody would have said, I already took you up to the room, what are you bringing up now? 7 different trips he made up there with weapons. And when they finally got to him, he had weapons at every window. He had weapons all over the place, rifles, automatic weapons. If that wasn't a commercial for weapon control, I don't know what was. Well, that's his view. 300 yards away, prime kill zone. There was 5,000 people in here. He was just randomly pulling the trigger and killing people. Killed 17 or 18 people in 20 minutes with a fully automatic weapon. People didn't know where to go. High ground is good. How do you defend against it? You don't. Those guys, the officers, had to get into the Mandalay Bay and work their way up. That took a lot of time. Sun Tzu said it in his Art of War, which was used by every tactician, military tactician, from the time that he published, this book got published. It says, "He who occupies the high ground will have the advantage in all battles. The enemy will delay attacking from a lower position." The other part of that quote is, if you're concealed in a higher position, in a high elevation, nobody knows where you are. Nobody knows where the weapon is, where you're firing from. Concealment is best achieved from the high ground. This is my team. We bring more weapons than you have. And we do that because we don't know what you've got, but we'll bring more than we need. Trust me, when we walked in the door, you knew we were there. The good-looking guy is me. Oops. Sorry. Cover and concealment, those are two different things. Cover is behind a barricade of something that, in case the other side starts to shoot back. Concealment is a totally different thing. Cover in Dealey Plaza, there was cover all inside of every building was cover. Concealment behind the picket fence, behind the South Knoll, but who knows? I mean, something that you could shoot through. You're not going to shoot through this wall, but cover and concealment, two different things. Concealment, on the other hand, is stealthy. You don't know where they're at. Does anybody see the sniper in this picture? There's one there. Give it a second. Can you see it? This is a good concealment. Right there. Blending in. Kind of like the guys in Dealey Plaza. They blended in. They hid in plain sight. You didn't know who the good guys and the bad guys were. And that was on purpose. The cops didn't know who the bad guys were. They're looking for people with rifles. You don't think the snipers, whoever's shooting at the president's going to walk around with a rifle? They're going to get rid of it. They don't know who the good guys and the bad guys are. Von Clausewitz, that's my only German I have ever known. Take advantage of concealment and the element of surprise to attack the unsuspecting enemy from a concealed position. These are tactics that have been handed down since the 1600s. That's how we win wars, because we use these kind of tactics. We're stealthy. And then sometimes we drop a 5,000-pound bomb on you, but you can't get to us because we're up in the air. Escape and evade is our last one. Whoever these shooters were had to know where their firing positions were going to be. Once they set that, they had to know how to get out. Where's my closest point of escape? What happens if I get caught? What do I do? Where's the rally point? Where do we run to? If there's, just for the sake of argument, let's say there's 7 teams in Dealey Plaza. They're not all going to go to the same place. They'll all bunch up at the same place trying to get in the same car. No, they're going to go 7 different places and directions. That's tactical. That's thought of ahead of time. This was not done overnight. This was thought out months and months before the assassination. These people had practiced this kind of stuff until it came like breathing. When I trained for the sniper, when I saw on the sniper team every Monday for almost 7 years, every Monday I was out at our lodge out in the county shooting my rifle. Every day, every Monday, rain, sleet, doesn't matter. We're out there shooting.
And our sergeant was very devious. He would come up with new scenarios. So we'd practice shooting through glass doors, shooting at balloons. I hated Tootsie Pops. Hated them. He'd put a Tootsie Pop in a 2x4 and you'd lay it out 100 yards away and go, okay, when I give you the order, you shoot that Tootsie Pop. So if you aim small, you miss small. Tootsie Pops are that big. I hit one at 150 yards on one shot. I can hit a head, probably 300 yards. But you practice and practice and practice, so it's breathing. It's just like breathing air. Shooting a rifle is nothing. Shooting a human is nothing. According to these, not to me, to these people, it was a target, nothing more. Chain of command, this is just my opinion. This is how we would have laid it out as tactical officers. You know, somebody's got to answer to somebody, and so you're the low man on the chain. So somebody's putting this together. Then he has facilitators who put it together logistically. Okay, we'll get these things lined up. I know a guy that can provide transportation. I know a guy can provide communications. I know a guy can do this, you know, safe houses or whatever it might have been. But down here at the bottom, this guy is in Dealey Plaza. He has to be. He's the field commander. He's deciding when the shots will be fired and if the shots will be fired. So this guy is in Dealey Plaza along with the mechanics, the shooters. These guys are nowhere around there. They're off in the background. Time on target. It's key. How long I'm the shooter, how long is my target going to be in the kill zone? How many shots will I be able to take? I have to know that in advance. If you can slow that car down, slow the target down, the slower the target, the better off that we're going to be able to be successful. Don't boo yet. It's Arlen Specter and William Greer, the driver of the limousine, of President Kennedy's limousine. He drove Franklin Roosevelt through Dealey Plaza in 1936. Did you know that? That's how old this guy is. He was 3 years past retirement, mandatory federal retirement. He's still driving the President of the United States. The President's real driver, who was normally the President's driver, died 2 weeks before the assassination at Camp David of a heart attack. So this guy steps in. Anyway, Specter asks him, Greer, what was your best recollection of the speed at which you were traveling as you turned left off of Houston onto Elm? My best recollection would be between 12 and 15 miles an hour. That's it's faster than a walking speed, but it's slow. Try to go 12 miles an hour on the interstate, you will die. So don't do that. So if we use our formula, go back to our math, and we want to calculate how long is it going to take for this target to cover this certain distance? Well, I know the distance between Houston Street and the Triple Underpass is 465 feet. How do I know that? I measured it. I actually went out there with my little rolly tape and I measured it because I'm anal and just, obsessed. So if the car is traveling at 30 miles an hour, it'll be in the zone for 11 seconds. That's not fast. That's not fast. That's too slow. That's too fast. Sorry. That's too fast. That doesn't give you a lot of time. Remember, all the rifles are going to be pointed at this roadway, and we need it to be there as long as possible so everybody can have a chance to shoot. Well, if we slow the car down to 25 miles an hour, you get 13 seconds, and you go 20 miles an hour, you get 16 seconds. Still not slow enough. We have to slow that car down. Well, who's driving the car? Bill Greer. Who's he work for? United States Secret Service. There was no love lost between the president and the United States Secret Service. They hated him for the most part because of his womanizing and whatever. But their job was to protect the president. So we got to slow that car down. Well, we can do that. We just tell the driver to go slow. He's part of the plot. You got to really slow down to show the people President Kennedy's in the back seat. Okay, I'll slow down. So if we slow it down to 12 to 15 miles an hour, as Greer says, and testified, that target is going to be in the kill zone from 15 to 30 seconds. That's plenty of time. Remember, there's multiple shooters. There's just not one guy in a building who hadn't fired a weapon in 6 years. We've got multiple well-trained shooters all over Dealey Plaza focusing on Elm Street. That's plenty of time to shoot and get a hit. All you need is one hit. One in the head, and it's done. I don't mean to sound callous, but that's how it is. So we figured it out. We already figured it out, Brian. Move on. So where do you aim? Any law enforcement people in here? No former law enforcement? Just me? Where do you aim on a target? A target is a person. When we trained, we shot stationary targets, paper targets, and we shoot here to here. Center of mass, we call it. That's where all your vital organs are. We had one or two of those, and you're probably going to slow down. But you've probably read stories in the newspaper where officers have shot a guy 14 times and he's still aggressive. Well, there's only one sure way to make that aggression stop. You go for the head. One high supersonic bullet through the brain cavity, it's done. You're over with. That's the extreme prejudice part. They were going for the head. Every shot was aimed at the head. They couldn't take a chance of shooting at his body. He might survive that. Go for the head. Well, where is the head at? This is what happens to a head when it's hit by a pistol bullet. 38 caliber pistol bullet through an egg. That's pretty devastating if you basically change in your mind that that's a human skull. It's over with. Where do you aim on this target? Well, if he's in profile, you put one right in his ear. It'll sever the brain stem. He'll die instantly. He'll never take another breath. If he's coming at you, you put one right in his eye, sever the brain stem. I know it sounds disgusting. My wife's going to tell me, you don't have to get so graphic. Yeah, you do. Because this is an operation that these guys were trained to do to kill one person. And the last one is if the target is moving away from you, you put one right at the base of his skull. Sever the brain stem, done. Fire control coordinator. This is the guy that's in Dealey Plaza. He's on the radio. Everybody's got a spotter. The shooters have a guy next to him, and they're on the radio. They're telling him, okay, get set up. We've got 2 minutes, ETA 2 minutes. All right, we're set up. We're on target. We're on scope, as they say. We're ready. Just tell us when the target appears, I'm online. Somewhere in Dealey Plaza in a high elevated position, I would suspect my fire coordinator was stationed so he could see the entire area with no obstructions. Nobody's going to be in front of him. He's going to be high up. Well, where would I put him? Well, you've got all kinds of buildings to put him on. Why not put him up high? Remember, nobody looks up. They're not going to look up because they're looking at Mr. and Mrs. President and Mrs. Kennedy. They're not going to look up and go, hey, there's a guy up there. Well, what are you going to do about it? Well, he's probably security, so I'm not going to worry about it. That was the idea. You don't know who the bad guys are. And I'm sure you've seen videos, film clips of the president's motorcade from the time it left Love Field, and the camera's panning up, and you see people hanging out of windows, and you see people on the roof. Are they good guys or bad guys? There was no security along the motorcade route. All the Secret Service agents were in the car behind the president. What are 7 guys going to do with a crowd of 100,000 people stretched out over 12, 15 miles? Not a dang thing is what they're not going to be able to do anything. So this is where I put our spotter. This is the guy that's in charge of the radio. Any of these 3 buildings are going to be the best, I think, because you get to look down the target, you get to look down the kill zone, and you can see all around what happens if anybody's getting close to your team. Hey, there's a guy coming behind you on the right, so let's check him out. So these guys, whoever was on top of this watching, had a commanding view, unobstructed, of the entire area. I'm going to ask for a raise of hands here real shortly. How many people have been to Dealey Plaza? Raise your hands. Oh. Of those of you that have been to the Dealey Plaza area, how many were there, have only been there the very first time you were there, what was your first impression? How small it was, right? I mean, this looks like, 5 football fields here. It's 2.5 acres. That's not a lot of space. And you're right on the road. It's very short, very compact, and distances are very, very short. This is from the top of the county jail, looking down towards Elm Street, along Elm Street. This would be a good spot. You can see, not only can you see the kill, but you can see this area over here in case somebody gets, in the way or gets involved. You go, hey, you got a guy coming to you. This is from the criminal courts building, just to the south of the jail. Commanding view of the area. You can see everything. You can see all the way. You could see all the way to the triple underpass. This is from the top parapet of the Little Red Courthouse, like a little steeple. That's a great spot. And my friend Gary Shaw gave me that picture, so thank you, Gary, for that. This is a great spot too. Problem is, if you get up there, and if you get, somebody confronts you and go, hey, you don't work here, what are you doing here? I'm looking for a phone. I heard the president got shot. A lot of people were using that excuse. I was just looking for a phone. Oh, okay, well, it is pretty bad. Go ahead and use that phone right there. This is the lead car. This was driven by the chief of police. Forrest Sorrells was the assistant, or the head of the Secret Service in Dallas, and 2 advance agents were in the car. Now imagine this scenario. Remember why I keep stressing nobody looks up? This is a closed car. Curry is driving the car, and in the passenger seat is a Secret Service agent. His job, according to his testimony, and I'm not making this up, his job was to look behind the car and make sure the president's car was still okay. Agent in the back was to look through the 2 officers in the front and make sure everything's clear on the front. They can't see a damn thing over their head. Well, that's where the shots are going to come from. What good is this? I don't understand the point of this car in the first place. But right behind it is the president's car. The president was supposed to be the 7th car in the line. It was moved up to the number 2 slot. Now we're making the turn. We're approaching Houston Street. Here's the only this is the only picture that I can, not very many pictures, show the agents looking up at the buildings. Well, what? So you look up, what are you going to do about it? There's people hanging out of every window. What are you going to do? Hey, get away from that window. There's no way they can control that. When Hillary Clinton came to Lawrence, Kansas is where the University of Kansas is. You know where that is, I'm sure. #1 basketball team in the country. Thank you. When Hillary Clinton came to Lawrence, Kansas, to the University of Kansas, I was assigned with a Secret Service agent to be on top of City Hall in the freezing cold. Thank you. Our job was to take out anybody who interfered with the motorcade from the airport to the University of Kansas, but we only had a window about 3 blocks. And our job was to make sure that nobody interfered, and there was officers along every part of that roadway. They removed mailboxes, they welded sewer manhole covers. They did all that. And they wouldn't let anybody stand on the roadway. Here, you're 15 to 20 people deep. And no way to protect the president. Making the turn onto Houston Street. When that car turned onto Houston Street, the fire coordinator got on the radio, scope on. That means you're looking through the scope and you're focused on Elm Street. He's coming. You better be ready. And they were. They were ready. But this is the part where they would have been told, we're here. Now it's just a matter of waiting until he gets on Elm Street. This is an interesting photograph. I'll show you in just a second. On the night of the assassination, when Lyndon Johnson got back to the White House at 12 o'clock in the evening, the first call he made was to J. Edgar Hoover. The president was shot at 12:30. It hasn't even been 12 hours yet. Lyndon Johnson's asking his best friend, the director of the FBI, Hoover says all shots were fired by Oswald. They already knew that 12 hours in. From the 6th floor of the book depository, and Lyndon Johnson cuts him off and says, were any of those shots aimed at me? How in the hell would he even know that? And Hoover says, no, sir. Lyndon Johnson says, wondering why he didn't shoot, and Hoover cut him off. He says, well, he didn't shoot at the president until he made the turn onto Elm Street, onto Elm. Why do you think he waited? Hoover says, well, it's my understanding it's that there were some trees blocking his view of the president before it turned onto Elm Street. I'm going to read that again. It's my understanding that there were some trees blocking his view, Oswald's view, of the president before it turned on Elm Street. Really? Where are the trees? Clearly, Hoover did not know what the crime scene looked like. Do you see any trees there? I don't see any trees. There isn't a tree in the sight except this one over here. And it's not anywhere close to the window, or this is the window. Here's the street. Why wouldn't you have shot at the president when he's coming right at you? If you're Lee Oswald and you're in the book depository and you're bound and determined to kill President Kennedy on the 22nd of November because he just made you mad, and he's coming right at your building, and you're up there by yourself with your crappy little rifle, why wouldn't you shoot him then? Well, you got a great view. It's unobstructed. He's coming at you. He's getting closer. Well, no shots were fired. Look at all these open windows here. That's a violation of the Secret Service protection orders right there. But again, there's 7 guys in the car behind the president. What the heck are they going to do about it? They're already in Dealey Plaza. Well, there's an open window. I hope there's nobody up in that one. Oh, gosh, it would be bad if we had somebody up there. President's moving towards Elm Street. Now the scopes are tightened up on Elm Street. They're all focused on one spot, that middle lane, because they know he's going to be in the middle lane. They're focused on that middle lane. How many of you are hunters in here? Or duck hunters, specifically duck hunters? There you go. There's 2 ways to shoot a duck, is there not? You can follow it or just wait for it to cross your path. That's what they did here. They all focused on one spot. Somebody's going to get him. Maybe not everybody's going to shoot, but somebody's going to get him. If we're all focused on one, he'll run into the bullet. The limo turns onto Elm Street. We're about 15 seconds from the assassination. Now you're really high, you're ready to shoot. Your finger's on the trigger, you've got the safety off, and you're pulling back on that trigger because you don't want to miss a chance to get him. There's the window. That's a light, a street light, but there's the window. Open, 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 open. They should have all been shut down. They weren't. Making the turn onto Elm Street. We're about 10 seconds away from the first shot. In the background in this photograph, this is the Tina Towner photograph. She was there with her father. And she took this picture as the car turned the corner, right next to him. 3 lanes of traffic, turned right next to him. Behind the limousine on Elm Street is this, appears to, I believe, it's some type of laundry truck kind of thing. It's a van or a box truck with a cage on top with it looks like, appears to be, at least I interpret it to be, bags of maybe laundry. What a great place to put a shooter. He's surrounded by soft material, maybe with a silenced weapon, and all he's going to do is just look down his scope, and he's right on Elm Street. All you got to do is wait for him to cross the center line, boom, pull trigger. Nobody would ever look up there. I'm not saying there was a shooter up. I'm just saying if I was going to do it, I'd put somebody in that. But the weird part is how are we going to know if I'm the conspirators, how would I know that this truck is going to be the first one after they block the traffic? I don't know. It's a chance, but it's probably prearranged. I don't know. But I think that would be a good spot for a shooter. Right up in there. You're high, you're above street level, and you're aiming right down Elm Street. That would have been your target line. Probably wouldn't have shot down here. This tree might have been in the way, but somewhere in there you could probably fire. This is the last picture before the shots were fired. Mrs. Kennedy's looking at the photographer. This is Croft, C-R-O-F-T, Croft. Mr. Croft took this picture, and 5 seconds later, shots were ringing out. This is the Phil Willis photo. Thank you, Gary. This is a first-generation copy of this film, of this picture. Probably never seen it this clear before. But there's a lot of stuff going on in this picture. No shots have been fired because apparently if they were fired, it didn't hit anybody because President Kennedy's still upright. Nobody's doing one of these numbers. But these guys, the two Secret Service agents on this side of the running board are looking in this direction. The guy you're protecting is right here, so let's keep an eye on him. This is Clint Hill. This is, help me out, Casey. What's his name? Gary, what's his name? I forget. Secret Service agent. Anyway, there's two guys on this side. These guys protect Mrs. Kennedy, and these two guys protect the president. No shots have been fired. If they were, they didn't hit anybody in the car. But in the background, on Elm Street, on the sidewalk, are two strange people. When I say strange, I mean they acted strangely before and after the assassination. This guy's got an umbrella on top of his head. It's not raining. It's 62 degrees. The only guy in the motorcade that we've ever seen films of has an umbrella, and he's right in the kill zone. A black umbrella. Think of it. What stands out on a nice, bright, sunny day? A black umbrella that's opened. Why do you have an umbrella here, sir? Oh, I'm protecting myself, my fair skin. Next to him on the at the front of this, at the curb, is this young man, or this gentleman. He's got a jacket, a white colored jacket with a little hat. And as the president's car approaches, his arm is at a 90 degree, at a bent right across his stomach. So we've got a guy with an umbrella, and we've got a guy with his arm down. They're not waving at the president. They go, hey, here he comes. Hey, how's it going? They're watching, but they're not. They're going to do something different. Now we're on scope. We're starting to pull the trigger back. We're getting ready. President's car is approaching the triple underpass westbound on Elm Street, and as the car gets closer to this freeway sign, shots are starting to fire. And in Zapruder's point of view, this is frames for the Zapruder film. From Zapruder's point of view, the president's car disappears for just a moment behind that sign. And when he comes out in view, he's already grasping his throat. He's already been hit before he comes out from behind that sign. He'd been hit in the front of the throat, not from behind. He's grasping his throat because that's where the impact was. He didn't reach behind him and go, damn, I just got shot in the back. No, a fly bites you or a mosquito bites you, you're not going to, on your face, and you're going to go, damn it, quit that. You're going to go where the pain is, right? It makes sense. He's been shot in the throat from the front. And where'd that shot come from? The grassy knoll. As the car was approaching, they fired, looking for the head, missed it, misjudged it. Comes out from behind the sign. President is obviously in some kind of pain. Now the guy that had his arm down to his side has raised it up, and the umbrella is clearly visible in this picture. President Kennedy has been hit. Connally has not been hit yet, and nobody on the south side of the street has any idea what's going on. They hear this. They hear the shots. They didn't know. Maybe not everybody recognized them as gunshots. Some people did. Some people didn't. Some of them expressed concern it was a backfire from a motorcycle. Some people thought it was firecrackers. Some other people said that's definite rifle shots, high-powered rifles. Target's not down yet, so we got to keep firing bullets. We got to keep shooting. This is the second generation copy negative, a positive from the original negative of James Outkin's famous picture of the motorcade on Elm Street under fire. Notice that these two guys who protect President Kennedy are not even looking at him. They're looking back here. These two guys who protect Jackie Kennedy are looking in the car. Several shots have been fired when this picture was taken. One of the teams got in a headshot. Target's eliminated. We're done. Pack it up. Get out. Don't leave any evidence behind. Meet at the rally point. Somebody was asking me some time ago, if you believe that these guys were professional shooters, what happened to them after they killed Kennedy? How come they haven't come forward and said anything? Do you honestly think that these guys are going to be left alive? No. If they weren't part of the team, long-term member, they were probably killed. I would bet they were all killed. Some of them were not. In fact, my new book, or our new book, is about one of those such individuals who remained alive until 1971. He was a shooter. His name was Roscoe Anthony White, Dallas police officer, former United States Marine. The aftermath. Clint Hill, the agent responsible for protecting Mrs. Kennedy, finally pulls his head out and goes, oh my God, there's something going on. I better get up there. And he climbs on the car and pushes Mrs. Kennedy in the car and supposedly rides all the way to the hospital in the back of the car. We have learned that that's not true. There was 2 agents in the car because the car stopped on Elm Street enough time for an agent to get in, more than one agent to get in the car. But you don't see that in the picture because he's already in the car. He's down on the ground. He's down on the seat. Oh, wait. Go back. Sorry. Go back. Go back, Brian. Remember we talked about looking up? Look at the people on the overpass. The President of the United States is in an open vehicle and is going to pass right underneath these people standing on this overpass. You think that's a good idea? Hell, they could take a brick and drop it on his head. Nobody told those people they couldn't be up there. Again, all the Secret Service agents were in the car following the president. What are they going to do about it as they're driving to him, driving to the overpass? Hey, get away from there. They asked the driver, Bill Greer, in his testimony, why didn't you move those people out of there? Oh, I'm just the driver. I don't know anything about that. They asked the driver a specifically direct question. When you heard the shots, did you recognize them as rifle shots? Oh, yes, sir. Why didn't you drive, where were the shots coming from? Well, it sounded like a bunch of angry bees coming into the car. Then they go off the record. The government goes off the record with a key witness. And they ask him, why didn't you speed up? Well, Senator, the reason I didn't speed up is because I would have been driving into the line of the fire, and that would have been stupid. Okay, back on the record. So what was the budget of the Secret Service in 1963? How would an agent know that? That's the question they asked him. They didn't want the answer. They did this for a reason. They don't want to know why President Kennedy was killed by multiple assassins. It was done. Let's leave it at that. Well, I ain't going to leave it done. I'm sorry. Were there spotters in the kill zone? Yeah, there were. I already told you 2 of them, showed them to you. This is a slide from Charles Bronson, not the actor, different Charles Bronson. But this is the car under fire on Elm Street. There's the limousine, there's the target in the car, there's our 2 guys, the guy with his arm raised up and the umbrella man. There's my good dear friend Beverly Oliver right there. Right there. She's filming the assassination as it comes to her. That's why they took her film. They don't want to see that film. No. Can't have that out in public. Oh my God. After the assassination, after some of the cars are going through, these guys sit down on the curb and sitting right next to each other. This is the guy with the that held the umbrella. This is the guy that had his arm raised up in the air. Nice socks, dude. White socks. Remember that. There are people in Dealey Plaza who have white socks who play an important, sinister role in the cleanup aspect of the assassination. White socks was a signal, if you will. Hey, I got white socks. I'm one of you. Oh, okay. I don't know what you're supposed to do, but I got to do a specific thing. Well, me too. And my good friend Betty Windsor knows intimately a man who is a operative of our government, and he told me and Betty and my wife and several others in Dealey Plaza one day, he says, yeah, that was how we knew each other, by the white socks. I was there. I watched it happen. Did you have white socks on? Yes, I did. Why did you have white socks on? That's how we knew what's going on. We're part of the team. Really. Who would ever thought that would have been a signal of any kind? So there's 4-panel pictures of these 2 young men. Everybody is running towards the fence, trying to get out of there. Not these 2 guys. You know, the reason they're not running is because they know what happened. They saw it. They're part of the team. They were successful. Now we got to get out of there. This picture shows the aftermath. This guy is looking down towards the triple underpass, and this guy is looking the other direction. He's got the umbrella, and that's not the umbrella, but he's got the umbrella with him. Bill and Gail Newman, I'll talk to you in just about a minute about them. But there are these 2 guys. They're not running away. Now, when I was a police officer, I didn't chase witnesses. If you don't want to talk to me, fine. But if you're sitting on the curb and something just happened, where am I going to go first? Have a seat. Tell me what you saw, what you heard, where were you at, what's your name, where you live. Nobody ever talked to these guys. They walked away like nothing ever happened. I believe that this guy is one of the radio communicators. There's an antenna right there. He's holding something up to his face, and he's looking towards the triple underpass. If you have one radio, you're going to have another one. It makes no sense to have one radio. Oh, hello, 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 hello. You got to talk to somebody, communicate on secured, encrypted networks. I believe we see, I'll show you that picture, who he's talking to. And what is he saying? We have no way of knowing because we don't know who they are. There's a colorized, polarized, negative, enhanced version of that last picture. That's something. That's an artifact of something. I believe it's an antenna. Remember, this is before the days of cell phones. These were radios about this big with an antenna you have to pull up so that you could get better reception. And once you're done talking, you put the antenna back down and you move on. But these radios were probably, maybe that big and square. I mean, these are big, cumbersome, heavy pieces of metal that you can communicate distances. There they are. This cop obviously says, there's something wrong here. I'm going to pull my pistol out. I'm ready. I don't know what, thank God he's not going to just start blasting away. But I don't know what he saw, but it made him think, I need to protect myself, pulls out his weapon. In the background are these two guys still sitting on the curb. Here's the rest of the motorcade coming through. I mean, there was 17, 18, 22 cars, something like that, in the motorcade. They're still coming through. Everybody's still running around. Not these two guys. Because they know what happened. They're part of the team. There they are. The guy with the radio walks towards the triple underpass and disappears. He's fidgeting with something in his back pocket or in his belt line or whatever. I don't know what that is, but it's weird. Not part of his coat, not part of his butt or his back. I think it's the radio. He's putting it in there, covering up with his jacket. He's not running because he's part of the team. He knew what happened. There's the guy with the umbrella. Everything's good? Yep. Okay, I'm out of here. He goes the other direction. Remember, if you're part of the team, when you escape and evade, you don't go the same place. You don't go the same direction. You walk singular, you're singles, you walk one way, the other way. You don't bunch up. I believe that the guy with the radio that was sitting on the curb was talking to this guy on the bridge, on the triple underpass, sorry. I believe he's talking to this guy. He's got something up to his face. It's not a cell phone. It's a radio. He's not listening to the broadcast. Oh, President Kennedy just got shot in Dealey Plaza. Oh, I'm up to date on the news then. No, that's a radio. He's talking to somebody or listening to somebody. And if this is Officer Haygood, if he ever confronted this guy, he probably showed him identification, says, I'm Secret Service, and I'm checking up what's going on. Oh, okay. I was a cop for 21 years, almost 22 years, and I'd only seen 2 Secret Service badges. I saw 1 FBI badge. I saw several ATF badges. But if you're a civilian, you've never seen an FBI badge before or a Secret Service, I could throw you anything down and go, that's my badge. Okay, it says Secret Service on it. You must be a Secret Service man. No, there's no guarantee that that guy was anybody. But he apparently wasn't accosted by this officer, and this guy walked off. We don't know where he went. We don't know who he is. Was the kill zone marked? What do you think the answer to that is? Yeah, absolutely. I told you earlier that these guys, when they determined that Elm Street was going to be the kill zone, they had to walk it. They had to know how far things were. They had to designate zones for each team. Because you don't want to have the same, every team shooting at the same hole. You want to, if it gets out of this area alive, then the next team shoots this zone. Do you follow? Okay, there's designated zones for the firing team. This is Bill and Gail Newman with their son Clayton and Billy. They were standing on the north side of Elm Street when the president passed, between 12 to 13 feet from them when the president got shot in the head. Can you imagine living through that for 60 years? Gail Newman is still traumatized by that. I would be too. Their concern is to cover their kids up because the shot went right over their head. But in the background, you see Elm Street, south curb. I've blocked out this area here. There's a yellow mark painted on the face and the top of that of that south curb. There's more than one of those around the entire length of Elm Street in the kill zone. I'll show you. Trust me, there are more. This is taken by the FBI's Secret Service reenactment in 1963 in December in Dealey Plaza. From Zapruder's position on the pedestal where he filmed it as the president's car was under fire. There's a mark on the curb right there, and there's another one right there. There are 7 marks from back towards Houston Street on that side of the street only, on the top and the face of that sidewalk, of that curb. That's suspicious to me. Of course, I know what they used it for. Zone designations for killing the president. Here's a color version of a reenactment photo. Everybody see that yellow mark on that curb? We know they were there because the photographs show that they were there. But we also have testimony, or not testimony, but we also have the story and statement from another person. I'll tell you that in just a second. Here's the Secret Service, the Secret Service reenactment looking back to the east on Elm Street. There's a mark there, and there's a mark there. Same 2 marks. They're there. Clearly, they are there. This is the last one. We're about 15 feet east of the triple underpass. That's the last mark. President was killed right in here, but there's designated zones continue all the way back on Elm Street, on that side only. Now, why would they only put them on one side? Anybody got a guess? Why were they on one side only? That's where the shooters were. They're on the opposite side of the street. And they're up high. So the guys up high can see the part of the paint that's on the top of the curb, and the guys on the north side can see it's on the face of the curb. Does that make sense? That's the way I see it. These guys are good. Now, the question is, when did Lee Oswald paint that on the side of the curb? I don't know. Where did he get the paint? And where did he take the paint after he painted them? And these things are only about 4 feet long, 5 feet long, and they're about 15 to 20 feet apart. We know they were painted that day, the day before or the day of the assassination, probably the early morning hours when nobody's going to stop and go, "What are you doing? Get out of here. You don't want to know." There's the Zapruder frame, 309. There's the president about to get one in his head. There's a yellow mark right there. Can you all see that? It's clear as a bell. That, to me, is a bell-ringing clue. Multiple people were doing this. When did Lee paint those? I don't know. There's another one right there. Malcolm Summers. I interviewed him before he passed away. He said he was standing on the south side of the curb, or south side of Elm Street. Shots ringing out. He says, "I'm in the line of fire." He threw himself down on the ground. After all the cars, some of the cars passed, and everybody's rushing up the hill towards the picket fence, Malcolm said to us that he ran up there just like everybody else did. It's like when hey, there's a fight, let's go watch. They think they maybe they captured somebody. And Malcolm says that when he got to the top, the second landing, the flat part, looking up, he says he sees a guy coming out from behind the fence wearing a white Stetson hat, suit, with a coat over it, like a raincoat over his arm. And as Malcolm approached the top of the steps, he saw the barrel of a gun sticking out from underneath this guy's coat. And he said, the man said, "Don't come up here, you could get shot too." Malcolm, "No problem." Well, who was that guy? He didn't flash a badge at Malcolm. He just said, "Don't come up here, you can get shot." Okay, you got me convinced. I'm not going up there. So when were these painted? There's a really good picture of it right there. That lady said, "I saw a man shooting from that 3-trunk tree over on the north side of Elm Street." That's a beautiful picture of you, dear, by the way. Beverly was there. There's no doubt in our minds that she was there. We also know that she was there because we have evidence. The three-trunk tree is this guy right here. Is that right, Beverly? Close, yeah, right there. There's the steps that Malcolm Summers ran up, and then right about in this area, this guy steps out with a gun under his coat. There's that three-trunk tree. I call it Beverly's tree. There she is, right there. Charles Bremen, his son Joey, Gene Hill, Mary Mormon, Gail Newman, Bill Newman, spotters, rest of the crowd's coming into the Dealey Plaza area. There's Beverly in the Orville Nix film. She's panning, I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but it appears that she's panning her camera with the car. There's three guys standing on the steps up here. One of them we know is this guy. Gary, is this Emmett or is this Emmett? Middle one is Emmett Hudson. He's the groundskeeper at Dealey Plaza. We don't know who these two other guys are. They disappeared. They didn't give a statement. They didn't do anything. They're gone. But there's the cars under fire. There's a little halo of pink something or lighter colored. President Kennedy just got hit in the head. There's Beverly in the Marie Muchmore film. Beverly was in Dealey Plaza, just so you know. Yes, ma'am. I know, and I got a picture of it right here. This is Bobby Hargis, the Dallas police officer on the motorcycle. He was riding next to the president's car and got splattered with the blood and brain material from the president's head. There's Mary Mormon and Gene Hill on the ground. Charles Brem. This is a brave lady, guys. She's standing up. There were people shooting, and she's standing up. Don't tangle with Beverly Oliver, I'm telling you. She can face down a bullet. There's a cop running towards the danger. And some of you may have seen the new documentary, the National Geographic thing, a three-part series, and the narrator said, showing all these people running, the narration says, and people were running out of the area of danger. They were not. They were running towards the danger because they may have seen or heard, hey, we got the guy, let's go get him. He wouldn't last for trial because they'll take care of him in Texas. This mark right here is the one that Beverly Oliver stepped in, I believe, on the day of the assassination. There's the curb. I took this, 5 years ago. The paint chips are still there. That's good paint on concrete. Everybody in this room that knows how to drive, or is a driver, you all know what yellow paint on the curb means. No parking, right? Where do you park in a 3-lane roadway? Why would they have no parking zone? There's no parking anywhere on Elm Street or Commerce or Main. It's a 3-lane roadway. Why would they need to put yellow paint down on the road or on the curb for designating color or designating kill zone? So we know that paint was fresh. There is Beverly Oliver's shoes that she allowed me to take a picture of. It still has yellow flakes on it. I suspect that was paint. Those stripes were painted that night, and it didn't get dry. And when Beverly walked across it at 12:30 or 12:35 in the afternoon of the next day, it's still wet. That's called forensic evidence. We can prove that those shoes made contact with that fresh yellow paint. And of course, she said she was there, so there you go. You've got corroborating evidence and you've got physical evidence. She was there, she walked on the paint. The paint shouldn't have been there. It wasn't on any of the streets from Love Field to Dealey Plaza. It was only on Elm Street, on one side. High ground, we talked about high ground is good. There's where I'd put people. All over those buildings. And on the roof. Again, why wouldn't you shoot when the car's coming at you? The perfect time to shoot him. He's getting big. Hell, you won't even need a scope. He's getting bigger. You can't miss. No shots were fired. There's still no trees there. This was one of the screen grabs from JFK, the movie JFK by Oliver Stone. That's the Patsy window. That's what I call it. They wanted people, some people to look at that window. Oh, I saw a guy in that window with a gun. I can tell you from experience, if you want to be seen, you stick the rifle out of the building and you pull the trigger. Oh, I can see that clear as a day. No, you don't. That's not how we train. We shoot from inside the building so you don't know where that shot came from. By the time you hear it, it's already inside of you. You shoot from a position of stealth. That's why we called snipers or stealthies. The west end of the same building, same floor, only on the west end of that building. I think there was a shooter up there. Whether he hit something or not, I don't know. But it's a good angle for the shot that went through Governor Connolly's wrist and leg. Straight line. Bullets travel in straight lines pretty much until it hits something. You know that, right? They don't turn the corners. They don't go up and down. They don't stop in midair like the government would have you believe. They move into a straight line until it hits something. And it continues on until all of its energy is expended, and then wherever it is, where it expends its energy, that's where you may find it. You may find it in the body, you may not find it in the body. So there's the view from the 6th floor window, west end of the building. You got a good view of the whole area. That tree was not that big. This was, I don't know, in the 70s or something. But that tree was not that big. High floor of the Daltex building, the building right to the east of the Texas School Book Depository. That's a good spot. You're looking straight down the line of where the president's going to be. And that fire escape, the outside fire escape on that building, on that side of the building, is perfect concealment. People could look up there all day and never see anybody. There might be somebody standing right on the fire escape in this picture. You can't see them. But I think that's a perfect place to put somebody. Put somebody in a window with the fire escape right next to them, right in front of them. They shoot through the fire escape. Remember, these guys were good. If I can hit a Tootsie Pop at 150 yards, these guys could hit a moving target. Big head, moving at 12 miles an hour. That's a piece of cake. Here's a view. Thank you, Gary, for this picture. This is a view with the fire escape still on the building, looking down Elm Street. That car's traveling as straight as you can make it until it curves, but while it's in the straight line, I could teach somebody to do that in 5 shots, how to hit that target. It's only about 125 yards to that red dot out there on the street. That's an easy shot. We try to make shots of less than 100 yards, because that's what we calculate on our dope book. But if you go outside that, you can figure it out. If you add another 50 yards, about 2 to 3 degrees of azimuth, depending on the level of the roadway, it's a piece of cake. Especially if you got a good high-powered scope. Oswald's scope was a piece of crap. If you get your eyeball up to it too close, you get parallax view and you don't see anything outside that 2-degree view window. It's a piece of plastic. The lenses were plastic. There's no adjustment of azimuth and elevation. You look through it and you could see a little bit bigger of an image. That's all you get. That's the shot you would have had. Straight line for a long distance right there. Straight lines are good. Curves are bad. There's the view you would have had. If you were a spotter with your shooter, this is what you would have seen. Put that dot right on that back, raise it up 3 clicks, boom. That's a headshot from the rear. It's done. Oh, we talked earlier about the government's continuing cover-up. This was inside the I'm not sure the specific date of the entry, Saturday Evening Post magazine. It was like Life magazine, Newsweek, Time, all that. This was a big, important magazine back in the 60s. And the caption read something like, "From the 6th floor of the window of the Texas School Book Depository, Lee Oswald sighted in his rifle and shot President Kennedy." That's not the view that the 6th floor window on the east end of the building would have had. This is the low floor of the Dow Tex building. They're already trying to convince you that Oswald was the guy who did it from the book depository. Well, we're going to show you a different picture to make it look how easy that shot was. Well, that's great, all well and good, but that ain't the right building. But nobody knew that. I did. I go, wait, that's the wrong perspective. That's looking from a different angle. There's an open window of the Dow Tex building. There's the fire escape. There's a guy on the fire escape right there. There's an open window that looks straight out that Elm Street. And when a shot was fired, I believe a shot was fired from that window, the man on the fire escape darn near fell off that fire escape because he wasn't expecting it. A loud concussion. Supersonic bullet was fired from that window right below him, and it probably scared the hell out of him. And he almost fell off of that fire escape. Look at all these people hanging out the windows. They shouldn't have been there. Top of the jail. That's a good spot. Good spot. You can see every occupant of the car. Thank you, Gary Shaw, for this picture. Probably never seen this picture before. But there's the book depository. There's the window. This is the top of the jail, looking straight down Elm Street. Great spot. Low ground level firing positions. On the bridge, grassy knoll. Now we've covered the people behind the president. Now we're going to talk about people to the right of the president that can see the designated markers on Elm Street. So when he's coming at them or he's moving parallel to them, you've got shooters around you. He was not going to be allowed to leave Dealey Plaza alive. And they made sure of that. The picket fence is behind those trees, or underneath those trees. This was taken clearly before or after 1963. The trees were full grown. But in 1963, those trees were not that big and bushy. But that corner of that fence, where it turns 90 degrees and goes parallel to Elm Street, is 40 yards from the center lane where the president is going to be, or the target is going to be. 40 yards. Patrick Mahomes could throw that underhanded with a football. Yay, Chiefs. Texas Tech guy. That's prime kill zone spots right there, kids. I say kids because we're all young, aren't we? Yeah. So there's 2 shooters behind the fence. There's Gene Hill's shooter way up at the corner, and Beverly's shooter down by the 3-trunk tree, and Ed Hoffman, who I haven't talked about yet, but I will. There's 2 teams right there. Did they know each other? Who knows? Doesn't matter. There's 2 people shooting from that position behind the fence. Concealment. Not cover, it's concealment. Well, you didn't conceal yourself because Gene Hill saw you and Barry Oliver saw you, so you didn't conceal yourself worth a darn. Gene Hill and Mary Mormon, 2 school teachers in Dallas, decided to take the day and go down and see Mrs. Kennedy. That's what they were wanting to see, was Mrs. Kennedy. So Mary grabs her little Polaroid camera, and they drive down in Gene's car, and they get to Dealey Plaza, and they park on Houston Street, and they're walking through Dealey Plaza and looking for a good place to go. They knew that the president's car was going to come down Elm Street, even though the newspaper said it was going to go down Main Street. Now, how'd they know it was going to go down Elm Street? I don't know. Maybe they asked a cop, where's the car coming? Oh, it's going to go down Elm Street. Oh, so you know more than the newspaper knew. Oh, well, thanks for that information. We'll go stand on Elm Street. There wasn't hardly anybody on Elm Street. Well, you saw the pictures. There's probably a dozen people standing on Elm Street at the time of the assassination on the south side. Now, what did I just do? There you go. Sorry. Jean Hill, Mary Moorman. They were standing right there. Red for the lady in red, Jean Hill. Mary Moorman standing right next to her with the camera. President's car is coming down Elm Street, gets right here. Jean says, I yelled at the president, hey, Mr. President, look over here. We want to take your picture. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Just that quick. Mary Moorman had the camera up to her face and probably out of reflex took a picture. And the picture she took, well, there she is taking the picture. President's about to be hit. Jean Hill, Mary Moorman. Jean's not even looking at the car. I think there's problems with the film, but we're not going to get into that. I think the film's been messed with, that she's not even looking at the president because the president's right there. But anyway, Mary's taking a picture, and she clicked the camera. Jean says, I saw a guy shooting from the corner of the fence right up there. Right at the corner of the fence. Saw somebody over there. Mary Moorman, with her Polaroid camera, takes a famous picture 1/6 of a second after the shot hit President Kennedy in the right temple. Right temple, not the left or the back of the head. One shot hit him right in the right head, right in the temple. And Mary saw that. There's the photograph. This is a second-generation copy of the original print that she gave me to take a picture of. And I scanned it at highest resolution. You can see a lot of activity. Abraham Zapruder is standing up here. Emmett Hudson, the groundskeeper. Driver, I don't know where the other guy's at. Well, this is the passenger. Mrs. Kennedy, the president. Motorcycle officers. And in the background, you can just see at the top of Bill Newman's head. Oh, the fingerprint. Oh, I'm glad you asked. When Mary got her picture, you know the Polaroid. I'm going to show my age. I had a Polaroid. You take the picture, and you have to pull it out, right? And you have to keep it level for about 10 seconds, and then you peel off the cover, and then you put this emulsion on it to lock in the oxides and all that from developing any further. And at some point, somebody put their thumbprint on it while it was still in the development stage. Fortunately, it didn't cover up the important stuff. It just covered up this officer. That's a blow-up of the Moorman photograph. President Kennedy is hit in the right temple by a supersonic bullet fired from the grassy knoll. Charles Brem is on the south side of the street. His little boy Joey's right with him. Charles Brem was a veteran of the Omaha Beach invasion of Normandy. He probably heard a couple shots before '63, relived that, I go back to the movie Saving Private Ryan. That first 30 minutes just bothers me a lot. I could not have gone through that. He was there in Omaha Beach. He said, the first thing I heard was a rifle shot. He says, I threw myself down on my boy to cover him up. He gets taken to local television station and did a live interview over the phone with whoever, I don't know who it was, but it was in the television studio. And he said the exact same thing. I was there with my little boy, and when the president got close to us, a shot rang out. I knew it was a shot, and it sounded like it came from across from us. We were in the line of fire. Didn't say anything about the building, didn't say anything about anything else. Right across the street. Charles Brem was never called to testify to the government. Why? Because he saw something different. We can't have that. Oh, no. If you didn't see Oswald pull the trigger, then we don't want to talk to you. That was the mentality of the government investigation of the president's murder. That's a travesty. It angers me. Bill and Gail Newman. Bill's an electrician. Gail's a housewife. They have two small children, Billy Jr. and Clayton. They saw him at Love Field, but they couldn't get very close. They were very close, but they couldn't get close enough, so they got in their car and drove to Dealey Plaza. And Bill found a place to park, and they walked into Dealey Plaza and stood there on the north side of the street waiting for the president to show up. How did they know what street the president was going to come down? Did they ask a cop, what street is he coming down? Well, he's coming down Elm Street. Okay, thanks. Again, there wasn't a whole lot of people there. From here down, there's nobody. Maybe another 3 or 4 people, but for the most part, you saw the pictures of when they were on Main Street, 15 to 20 deep, not here in Dealey Plaza. The driver, I would have thought, would have said, well, there's nobody here. We're hauling out of here. We'll go 40, 50 miles an hour to get to the Trade Mart. It's going 12 miles an hour. For who? There's nobody there to see you. Anyway, so picket fence is over here. Grassy knoll's over here. The Newmans are watching the president's car approach. Shots ring out. Bill says, get down, cover the kids. He had foresight enough to do that. They covered their babies. Look at the look on Gail's face. Is that terror? Yeah, she's scared to death. Absolutely scared to death. Can you imagine standing upright and a shot goes over your head about 3 feet? A supersonic bullet fired from behind you that you didn't expect, and it goes right over your head, and you see it hit a person in the head. It blows the brains out. Yeah, I'd be upset too. Well, they were taken. So the motorcade guys are coming. The press people are coming through. They're all over Dealey Plaza now. They're jumping out of the cars, and they're seeing people diving on the ground. And they went up. They thought, my God, they've been shot. They went up and took pictures of them. And that was that previous photograph you see of the Newmans on the ground. This area right here. This is a retaining wall, but behind that is a picket fence, and it goes back to about there. It turns and goes parallel to Elm Street. Bill Newman and Gail Newman and the 2 boys were taken to a local television station within half an hour of the assassination. And that's what they said. On live television, they didn't have time to make up anything. This is what happened. We were in Dealey Plaza, and we saw this. I didn't want to do that. Come on. He was directly in front of us, and I was looking directly at him. When he was hit in the side of the head, the shot came from the garden directly behind me. It was on an elevation from where we were standing at the curb. Folks, I don't know how much more plain you can have this story, but there's somebody shooting from behind the Newmans. That's not the building. He never mentioned the building. In any of the interviews that he did with the local television, never mentioned the building. He never looked there because the shot went right over their head. They were never called to testify. They gave a statement, an affidavit to the Dallas County Sheriff's Office, and that was it. They were 12 feet from the car. But yet the government went to great pains to find Lee Oswald's 4th grade teacher in Fort Worth and had her come to Washington to testify, asked her 9 questions. What kind of a boy was he? Well, he was in 4th grade. I don't know what kind of a development he would have had, but he wasn't just a little guy. These people were 12 feet from the car. They didn't ask him a damn thing. Didn't even ask him to come to Washington to testify. Bill yelled at me to get down and cover the kids. It was horrible. Yeah, I can imagine. Abraham Zapruder, who took the film of the assassination, said at least one shot was behind me. Behind me. Never mentioned the building. It was behind me. He said, in fact, since you asked, there was a policeman ran past me running back to the parking lot. Cops are stupid because we run into the line of fire. But did they ask Zapruder that? No, didn't ask him that. If he didn't volunteer, they didn't ask him. We have your film. That's all we need. Thank you for that. And we'll get it back to you in a while after we edit it. That's another story. Was the shot that hit President Kennedy coming from the right front? Well, physics don't lie. Drew a straight line through the car at the same point. Here's the headshot. Just after the headshot, the impact blew him back into the left of that car with a lot of force. His head is absorbing the momentum and brute force of that bullet. Supersonic bullet hit him probably 2,000 to 3,000 miles, 2,000 to 3,000 feet per second, and impacted the skull and just blew it out. That's not a way I'd want to go. Jackie screamed out, "My God, they've shot his head off." They did, literally shot his head off. Sam Holland was on top of the overpass, the triple underpass, overpass, whatever you want to call it. He testified before the government in Dallas. He said, we all saw it. All of us workers were you saw the picture I showed you with all the guys on top. He says, we all saw it. The smoke drifted out from under those trees. One shot definitely came from there. Well, Mr. Holland, you're not a ballistics or firearms expert, are you? No, sir, I'm a railroad worker. Well, then keep those opinions to yourself unless we ask you. He was just answering your question. Where did the shots come from? Right there by the fence. You're mistaken. You probably heard echoes, and there was probably a sewer pipe over there just bellowing smoke. That's what that was. Where he's talking about is the corner of the fence. He said after the assassination was over with, he and a couple other guys ran off the bridge and ran to that area specifically to see if they could find somebody. He said there was footprints in the mud because it had rained earlier that morning. There was footprints in the mud and lots of cigarette butts between the fence, on the back side of the fence, and a bunch of parked cars. Some of the cars had mud on the bumpers, like somebody put their boot on it or shoe and scraped off their mud. But there was nobody back behind the fence. According to your government, there was nobody back there. That's just speculation, and it's not proved. Yeah, it is. Physics don't lie. This man was on top of the Terminal Annex, the post office, the big building on the south side of Elm Street, or south side by Commerce and Main. He's on the top of that roof, and he's watching the motorcade. And the key part here is he says, I saw a man running right after, I can't read it, I'll have to go over here. He says, I saw one man run towards the passenger cars on the railroad after the volley of shots. Mr. Price was not called to testify either. There's a repeating pattern here. Tom, were you going to get me a little water? Yes. Thank you. A little scotch in it would be good. Glenfiddich, that's fine. Lee Bowers. Lee Bowers was an employee he was a switchman for the Union Terminal Company, and he was in a railroad tower 14 feet up off the parking lot and had a commanding view of the fence and the area inside that parking lot. And I'm not going to read this to you, but the important part was he said he saw a flash of light, something he couldn't really distinguish, but it was a flash of light. It caught his attention. And he looked over there and he saw men who he didn't recognize. Something apparently happened over there that I don't know what it was, but it was something that caught my attention. Thank you. Mr. Bowers was called to testify, and they did a good examination of him. But again, they told him, you are not a firearms expert, are you, Mr. Bowers? No. Well, then you can't give an opinion about that. Okay, fine. I won't. That's the railroad tower. It's directly west of the book depository in the same parking lot. That building has been off limits since, I don't know when, but a long time. I've always wanted to get in there. And when I was in Dallas for a fraud conference, 3 of the guys went with me, and they go, "You're a Kennedy guy?" "Yeah." "Well, can I take you to Dealey Plaza and we'll show you around?" "Sure, that'd be kind of fun." So we walked through Dealey Plaza. I told them about this building. I'd never been in it. They went inside the 6th floor museum, and I'm sitting out on the bench. I called my wife, and I said, "Well, I'm still in Dallas. I'm doing a tour now." She goes, "No, you're supposed to be working." "Well, I'm not working yet." So I see a DART, a Dallas Area Rapid Transit truck, pull up to that door, and the guy gets out of the truck, and he takes a work bag and some saws and stuff, and he goes inside the building. Aha! I'm an inquisitive kind of guy, so I walked over there with my camera. Met him as he was coming out. "Sorry to bother you, I know you're working. I can smell the sawdust. I know you're cutting up stuff. Any chance I can go in there with you and take a picture?" "Sure." I got in there, and I took a picture. I took a lot of pictures. And there's the book depository. There's Mr. Bowers' tower. That's where he was. And there's the picket fence. There's Elm Street. That's where he saw the activity. Something caught his attention that made him look over there. I called my buddy, I called Casey, and I said, "Guess where I just walked out of?" "I have no, Campese's?" No, not Campese's. "I was in the railroad tower." He goes, well, I won't tell you what he said, but he said, "Did you take pictures?" I said, "Oh yeah, I got pictures." But Lee Bowers could see all that whole length of that fence. There were some cars parked there, but he saw something that caused him to look over there. And he could see the entire backside of that fence all the way down to where it turned to the triple underpass. Well, Mr. Bowers wasn't around very much longer. He died in a one-car crash in Midlothian, Texas on a rain-soaked road in 1966. Because he saw something different. He was killed. I have no doubt in my mind that he was killed. The guy he didn't have cancer, he wasn't in ill health. They killed him. There was a witness that they couldn't afford to have anymore. Ed Hoffman, my good friend, all of our good friend. Beverly and my wife, and Gary and Casey, we all fell in love with Ed Hoffman. He's a deaf mute. I co-wrote a book about him, told his story. He was standing on the Stemmons Freeway on the day of the assassination, right here. That's Stemmons. There's the parking lot. There's the fence. He could see all this activity around in here. He saw a lot of weird, strange things. But he couldn't communicate because he's deaf. So he communicated by sign language, American Sign Language. So as we're writing our book about him, which thrilled him to no end, he thought that was great because nobody believed him. So we wrote the story. It's called Beyond the Fence Line. Ed said he stood there and watched a lot of weird things going on, but he didn't know who they were. Could have been security people. He had no way of knowing. He said one guy was standing by the fence. He said he had a jacket on, a dark jacket, and another guy was there who was a policeman, didn't have a hat on. I don't know if you know this, Beverly, but this is the story for this. Ed said he saw a policeman standing by the fence, behind the fence, with no hat. He knew it was a policeman because he could see the badge and he could see the shoulder patch. DPD only had shoulder patch on the left arm. And Ed could see that. He's about less than 200 yards away. He's not going to be able to tell you his eye color, but he can tell it's a person. He can tell it's wearing a uniform. And he said there was a man who was a stocky build man walking back and forth and talking to this cop. Ed's attention was drawn to something else. There was a car drove through here. He paid attention to that. Next time he looked back toward that policeman, the guy with the stocky build was gone. But he says, I remember the guy had a camera around his neck, the stocky guy. He said, I didn't think too much about it. Maybe he was press, who knows? But Ed said suddenly he saw a man stand up. He was bent over. The man stood up, and he had a rifle, and he leaned it over the fence, pointing it towards Elm Street. Now, Ed's a deaf mute. He can't hear anything, but he said he saw the man shoot. He saw the man shoot, and he saw smoke. Where do we have smoke on the fence before? Didn't that one guy say that? Yeah, Sam Holland said there was smoke by the fence. He said the man who shot, turned towards Ed's position, and the rifle was across his chest like this, and he ran. The man ran down the fence line and stopped suddenly and tossed that rifle underhanded to a man who was standing by one of the railroad switch boxes. That man caught it, took it apart, put it in a canvas bag, and walked briskly out of the area. Well, that's not Lee Harvey Oswald, because Lee Oswald's in the building, unless he ran down over here and did all that. Ed said by the time he looked up, the president's car, Ed couldn't see this because the triple overpass blocked his view, but Ed said by the time he realized there was something still going on, the president's limousine came up from underneath the underpass and was going on Stemmons Freeway. And he saw the president's car, and he looked right down into it from an elevated position, and he could see the president's head was blown off. Big hole in the back of his head, right here on the back. He said Mrs. Kennedy was on her knees, facing the back of the car, on the floorboard, shaking the president. And Ed said that the back of the president's head looked like big, red, wiggly jello. My God, I saw the man who shot the president. Ed starts running. From here, he starts running towards this officer who's on, this DPD officer who's on the trestle, railroad trestle, trying to get his attention. Now the Secret Service follow-up car is coming underneath, and Agent Hickey is facing the rear of the car with a loaded and locked AR-15 and points it right at Ed, who's running down the side of the Stemmons Freeway trying to get this officer's attention. Pointed it right at him. Ed stopped. I would have too. And the rest of the cars came by. Ed was in shock, like everybody else in Dealey Plaza. But Ed had the fortitude to get to his car, drive around Dealey Plaza, and try to get back here to see if he could see that man who had the rifle. Couldn't do it. Couldn't even get close to the place. So Ed went home, or went back to his office, or went back to his family-run floral store, and said, I just saw the president, signed to his wife, I just saw the president get shot in the back of the head. The radio's on, but the daughter is the only one that can hear. She's listening to the radio. Said, you're right, Dad. They said the president's been shot. I was there. I saw it all. So that night they were watching TV, and Ed told us, and it was the funniest part of his whole story, is they're watching TV. Ed's a deaf mute. His wife, Rosie, is a deaf mute. They don't have sound in their house, but Mary, the daughter, they're watching TV, and they show Oswald on TV, and it says Mary is telling Ed and her parents that this is the man who shot President Kennedy. Ed goes, no, it ain't. No, it ain't. Not the guy I saw. So Ed lived with that for years and years and years, knowing what he saw, and nobody believed him because he had a disability. Well, we wrote his story, and it's a great mystery story with a happy ending because Ed was happy that we wrote his story. Ed passed away in 2010. The man I saw by the fence was wearing a dark suit. He was aiming a rifle over the fence, and I saw a puff of smoke, and I thought it was from a cigarette. When he turned, I could see the rifle. That's pretty good stuff. He couldn't have made that up. He didn't make it up. He's telling what he saw. There's Ed, Casey, and I. He was my Texas dad. Now I have a new dad in Texas, but this was my dad then. God, look how skinny those guys are. Look at this guy. He's a rail. Where is that guy? I don't know where he went. This is the press secretary, Malcolm Kilduff, the assistant press secretary, Malcolm Kilduff at Parkland Hospital. President Kennedy arrived at the hospital. They took him into trauma room 1, tried to save his life. It was a futile effort. Didn't work. A third of his head's gone. And every time they put blood into it, it'd come right out. So he died at 1 o'clock. And Malcolm Kilduff, the assistant press secretary, announces to the world at Parkland Hospital conference room, President Kennedy died today in Dallas. Somebody asked him a question. Well, how did it happen? We didn't see it. What happened? I'm told it's a simple matter of a bullet right through the brain. Where's he pointing? Right here. Oswald's behind him. So wouldn't it make sense that it said the bullet hit him in the back of the head? Kilduff had information that the bullet hit the president in the brain, right here. That's pretty good evidence right there for me. Of course, I'm a critical thinker. That makes sense to me. So low ground firing positions, we've covered those. The manhole, the sewer. The sewer. Everybody loves the sewer story. It's not a story. There was nobody in there. That would be stupid to put somebody in there. Tactically, it would be dumb. It's even more stupid because if you get in there, how in the hell are you going to get out? You're going to pop yourself out and go, don't worry about me. I'm working on the sewer. No. Was there a shooter in the sewer? Negative on that Ghost Rider. There was no man in the shooter. Nobody in that sewer. Be a good place if you wanted to take a picture, but can you imagine firing a pistol or from inside the sewer? You'd be deaf for the rest of your life. But this is Elm Street. There's the book depository. There's the grassy knoll and the steps. This sewer inlet connects to this one, which connects to the next one on Main Street, and the next one, it's a big pipe. That's where the water goes when it drains, and it drains to the Trinity River. Yeah, somebody goofy guy can get in there, but I'm not crawling in an 10-inch pipe to get out of it. That's as much as I can get my big butt in. But somebody did that years and years ago and crawled from the Trinity River through these pipes and was able to get into the sewer inlet. Why? Why would you do that? What happens if you get the plans for the sewer and you get to a place and it's blocked? Oh God, now I got to back out. No, that's not a place you'd want to put. Tactically, it's not a place you want to put anybody. Did any shots miss the target? Yes, they did. This is a picture from Love Field when the president's limousine was being staged for the arrival. The president's going to sit in the back seat here. Mrs. Kennedy, President Connolly, Mrs. Connolly, the driver, and the passenger. But the chrome strip that the bubble top, the plexiglass top attaches to is right here. There is no damage to that part of the car. There's no bullet hole. There's no fragment. This is the president's car. You don't think they're going to take care of it and wash it every day? Routine maintenance. They would have seen, we got to fix this before we go to Texas. That looks pretty bad. A big bullet hole or a big nick in the car? No, they won't do that. So there's no damage to the car in Love Field. Half hour later, the windshield's cracked from the inside. These are blood spots, splatter spots, blood spatter. Forensics people would have a heyday looking over that car today. I was in Dearborn, Michigan on another training exercise, and in the Henry Ford Museum, they have a reasonable facsimile thereof of President Kennedy's limousine. Placards all over. This is President Kennedy's death car. No, it's not. It was rebuilt on the orders of Lyndon Johnson within the weekend, taken back to Hess and Eisenhart in Dearborn, Michigan, and stripped to the chassis and rebuilt. That's not the car, people. And I was saying that out loud in the museum. And this cute little Oriental couple, they're taking pictures, and he's standing next to the car, Kennedy's death car, take another picture. And I could hear them in broken English talking about President Kennedy, this is the car he was shot in. I go, I can't let that go. I can't let our foreign allies believe that we would put that on display. So I walked up and I asked them if I might speak with them for a moment. They, oh, yeah. This is not the president's car when he was killed in Dallas. They looked at each other. Oh, did you hear what he said? This isn't the car. So they're asking me some questions, intelligent questions about the assassination from a historical perspective. Now a couple other people are coming up and they're listening. Now I'm giving a tour. And I look in the background, there's a security guard going, yeah, we got another tour guide up here. You want to see if we can get him out of here? Guy walked up to me and says, we don't want you to give a tour, so just move along. It's a museum. You mean I can't say anything? Apparently I can't. Not in the Dearborn Museum of Henry Ford. Anyway, back to the picture. There's a crack in the windshield. That's a spider crack. It emanates from the center outward, and blood splatter. Also, the chrome is damaged. This is right above, this is the driver's side visor, this is the passenger side visor, that chrome I told you about or showed you. Now it's got a big old dent in it. And the Washington, D.C. Dallas or Secret Service guys went over there to the White House garage and examined the car for debris, evidence, whatever, trace evidence, whatever it might have been. And they wrote, yeah, the windshield's cracked, and they measured where it is. That's great, good work there. But then they wrote down here, no bullet holes found. What the hell do you think that is? Somebody with a ball-peen hammer decided to blast into the chrome? That's a bullet hole. No bullet holes found. Well, you're not very observant. You would not pass my academy class on evidence collection. You're failed. So, Southside Elm Street, there was something in the grass over there that caused people to go over and look at it. What it was, maybe it was, or maybe it wasn't a bullet. Something hit the grass over there. This is what we're talking about right here. First rule of law enforcement as a crime scene investigator, when you go to a crime scene, you don't put your toolkit in the picture. That's the officer's taking the picture. That's his photo kit. That's not how it was when the case was on. You know, you don't take a picture. You don't have a picture of yourself in the crime scene because you weren't there when the crime occurred. Anyway, so here's this concrete, remember the sewer crossed the street underneath the road, and something hit the grass over in this area here. Well, there was an officer on the top of the triple underpass by the name of J.W. Foster. Something caused him to go over there because he saw something hit the ground or somebody called his attention to it. Hey, there's something over here. So Officer Foster goes over, and he's quickly joined by a sheriff's deputy from the Dallas County Sheriff's Office named Buddy Walters. And they're standing there, and I have a picture, I'll show you, but they're standing there looking at this, whatever this is in the ground. I don't know what it was, but apparently it was piqued the curiosity of two law enforcement officers. J.W. Foster is pointing, yeah, I saw it come out of that building. Well, that would be impossible. But anyway, he's pointing towards the book depository. This is Deputy Sheriff for Buddy Walters, and they're right there in this area. He would not pass my evidence integrity class. You don't touch anything until you have somebody collect it. You can go, yeah, it's there. We measure where it's at. Picture, and then we collect it. But he touched it, whatever he did with it, I don't know. But he's touching it. Or he's attempting to pick it up out of the grass. And then here comes this guy. We don't know who this is. Dallas Deputy DPD, Buddy Walters, right there. He comes over, and he's touching it, picking it up, whatever. Got a coat over his arm. Right there. Something in the grass there. This is William Allen, who was a news photographer for the local paper, taking pictures while this is going on. Well, whatever it was, he picked it up, this unknown man, picked it up, put it in his pocket. That's not how you collect evidence. And I don't have a great picture, but guess what color socks that guy had on? White. You're paying attention, that's good. There's something going on in that picture. Can't ask any of them. We don't know who this guy is, don't know if he's dead or alive. He's dead. Officer Foster's dead. The evidence has disappeared. Whatever it was is gone. James Tague was an eyewitness to the assassination. He was standing underneath Commerce Street. This is Main, this is Elm, this is Commerce Street. James Tague was standing at the opening of the Commerce Street part of the underpass, and something nicked him on the left cheek. Something stung him on the left cheek enough that it drew blood. And so he's standing in Dealey Plaza, all these people are coming around, and somebody says to him, the deputy sheriff says, "Hey, you got blood on your cheek there." He goes, "Oh, I do? Well, wonder where that's what that was. Something stung me when I was down here by the underpass. Oh, let's go look. Maybe something hit the curb. Well, that's a good idea. Let's go look." Charles Brem, this is a picture of Charles Brem telling his story. There's James Tague right there. Right there. There's his cheek. Something cut him on the cheek. Superficial, but it caused the deputy to look at him and go, "Hey, you got blood on your face. Show me where you were standing." So they go back to where Tague was standing, and they walk the curb line back towards the book depository, and you see an impact for something that hit the concrete. Now, it had to have been something of a high velocity to nick the concrete, because concrete's a pretty durable substance, and that's why they build roads with it, right? So something at high velocity struck that and took a little chunk out of it and hit James Tague on the cheek. The concrete fragments, not the bullet. Well, it may have been bullet fragments too, I don't know. Depends on what kind of bullet you're shooting. Final analysis, let's wrap her up. This was a highly organized, multi-shooter ambush of the chief executive of our country in broad daylight in front of hundreds of witnesses with extreme prejudice. It was done for a reason. Anybody who was in Dealey Plaza that day lived through that. I wouldn't have done it. I don't think I could have done it. Beverly Oliver's a hero. She said the same thing for 60 years. I believe her. There's no reason I don't want to believe her. She hadn't given me any reason to not believe her. Besides, she's a good friend of mine. I wouldn't put my reputation on the line and go, she's a fake. No, she ain't. And I defend you, by the way, dear. Oh, I defend her at every chance. There's some people, believe it or not, there are people out there that go, "Oh, that wasn't her." Yeah, that was her. Well, then tell me who it was. Well, I don't know, but it wasn't her. That's not a good enough reason. So, multiple shooters behind, in front of the target, successful. Visit our website, Casey and my website. There's lots and lots and lots of pictures on there, lots of good information about witnesses. ProjectJFK.com. Published in 2008, our first book, Beyond the Fence Line. It's available on Amazon. And the new book that's coming out in 3 weeks, it's called Admitted Assassin. It's the Roscoe White story. Roscoe White was a shooter on the grassy knoll, admitted to it in a diary. His son found artifacts and said, "My dad was a killer." That's another one that says, "Oh, he's a hoax." Why would he live with that legacy of his dad killed people if it wasn't true? So, questions, I'll answer.
Questions, comments, or protests? I'll work my way backwards. This is the library. You can say what you want. Questions, comments. The lady is our first.
Are you aware of forensics in terms of the insertion point of a bullet being smaller than the exit point, and would that not be consistent with the shooter from the knoll?
Okay, ask me that again.
The entry point of a bullet into a skull and the exit point, would not the exit point be much larger and therefore blow off the back of his head?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how you can tell after the event during a medical examination, an autopsy. You can tell the difference between the two without even knowing how it happened. Small entry, big exit. It's been that way ever since the invention of gunpowder. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for being here. My question, you've been studying this for so long. Have you or Beverly or Gary ever been threatened in any way? Maybe?
Not me, but Gary Shaw has got a couple stories that he'd be glad to share with you out in the hall.
They won't mess with him.
They won't mess with me. They let me put it this way. They know where I live. If they want to come to me, they'll know where. They'll just show up, and then we'll deal with that. But they're not worried about me. They're not worried about people who write about it. They're worried about people who were there, and they're still continuing to talk about it. Yes, sir.
Yes. How come you didn't mention the testimony from people like Howard Brennan, who was sitting on a railing at Elm and Houston, and also the workers that were on the 5th floor below Lee Harvey Oswald, who claimed to see the rifle coming out of the window and hearing 3 shots?
Well, the reason I didn't mention Howard Brennan is because I don't believe him.
Okay. So his
Second of all,
testimony doesn't count.
it's interesting that you asked about Howard Brennan. I normally talk about him, but in the Zapruder film, if you would watch the entire film, you can see him sitting on the concrete wraparound facing Houston Street, facing the criminal courts building, okay? He's facing that direction. The book depository is up here. When he testified, before he testified the day before, they took him down to Dealey Plaza and put him in a spot where he was now facing the book depository, and they asked him, "Is this where you were?" He's not going to say no, but the government falsified the information beforehand. They had the Zapruder film. They saw him in the Zapruder film facing that way, but they staged him facing this way so he could say, "Oh, I saw the guy up there." The other part of Howard Brennan is he said he was nearsighted and he could look up 75 feet up in the air, 40 feet across the road in the brilliant sunlight, and can tell you the hair color of the man, how tall he was, and how much he weighed.
But you would
That's bull.
take the testimony of Sam Holland, who basically saw a shadow or something.
Sam
That's-
Holland saw
that's
smoke
credible.
coming out from underneath
Smoke,
the trees, yeah.
Also, have you read the books Reclaiming History by Vincent Bugliosi?
No, I'm not
and
going to
Case
waste my
Closed?
time.
So why wouldn't you be open-minded to that?
Oh, I am open-minded, but I already
Well,
know
you
his
haven't
story.
read it, though.
Well, I'm
So
not
how
going
can
to. I'm
you
not going to. I'm not going to qualify Vincent Bugliosi's
all right.
story because
I would suggest you read that.
what he's doing. Correct me if I'm wrong. He is regurgitating the Warren Commission. He's not telling us anything new.
Okay, well,
I read it. My name's Casey Quillen. I'll bring the mic to you in just a second.
It's not worth my time. But I have it in my library. I'm not going to read it. I use it as a doorstop. Well, they can say whatever they want about my book. If you don't want to read it, don't read it. You know, it doesn't matter to me. I'm happy.
Okay. Anybody down over here and I'll head over there.
Yeah, my question is, you were talking about obviously we're on the Knolls, supposedly. Is that the guy you were talking about whose name was White?
Yeah, Roscoe White, yeah.
And he was the one that supposedly was seen with the rifle sticking, that might have fired the shot. I mean, that picture, where you see a guy that they call the badge
Oh, the badge
man.
man? No, I don't think that was, I don't think that picture is legit. I think that's a Rorschach's test that put it up there. I don't believe that was Roscoe White up there at all.
So I just got a question, and that is about the shots. Everything I've read, seen, looked at, all the reports say the witnesses heard between 3 and 4 shots. If we have multiple teams, would we not have multiple shots? And why were all the reports pretty much 3 and 4 shots and not more
Well,
than that?
Let me just emphasize.
And I'm an ex-military guy too, so I understand.
Let me just throw a correction to you. Some of the witnesses said they heard 2. Some of the witnesses said they heard up to 8 to 10 shots. But there's things called suppressors and silencers. So I believe, from a tactical standpoint, that the shooters who had silencers were shooting from a place other than from behind. The ones that we wanted to see and wanted to hear in the position behind had no suppression and no silencers. Those were the ones we want to see. We want to hear, yeah, it came from behind me. We didn't know anything about the ones in front of me. Yes?
Okay, I may have the name wrong a little bit. Louis DeWitt, the umbrella
Yeah.
man that came and spoke to the HSCA. What is his story? I mean, have they disproven this man or what?
Well, I'm not that versed on him, but what I do know is he was called to the HSCA and he brought a 10-spoked umbrella. The one in the Zapruder film was 8. So he brought the wrong umbrella, first of all. And what's interesting about that is when he opened the umbrella, people were ducking. They go, oh God, he's got a weapon. I think it was a signal. I don't think it was a weapon. It's not practical. I mean, the CIA had a thing that shoots a flechette little dart. You pump the handle and it shoots, but how would you ever aim it? It wouldn't be accurate. The reason for the umbrella, strictly in my opinion, from a tactical standpoint, was a signal. He's up, he's still up, he's still up, now he's down. On the guy next to him with the arm up and the arm down to the side, everything's cool. He's up, boom, headshot, he's down. We got one team watching this guy, the other team watching this guy.
Okay, I would like to know if all the bullets that were fired, if they were ever all recovered, and if all the bullets were from the same, were they all from the same type of shooter?
Gun? No.
Yeah, were the bullets all the same? Were they all were they different sizes? I guess is what
Yeah.
I'm asking.
The only bullet that was the only whole bullet that was recovered supposedly went through President Kennedy and Governor Connally, and it found its way at Parkland Hospital on a stretcher. It was nearly in pristine condition where it could almost be fired again. They said that bullet went through 2 human bodies and broke bones. The other 2 shots that hit President Kennedy, the one in the back and the one in the head, was never recovered. It was fragmentation rounds, and there was a reason for that, so there would be no evidence behind. When the bullet hit the president, hit the head, the cranium, it splintered into 1,000 million pieces with enough force to tear his brain out. You look at the X-ray that is in the National Archives, right posterior side, the right side of the head, the X-ray, the negative part of the X-ray, it looks like little sand particles all from the front all the way back to the back of the head. So those bullets were not supposed to be found. And the ones that were in the grass, that disappeared, so we don't know what to match it to. So, like I said, these guys are professionals. They've done this before. They don't leave any evidence behind. Yes, sir. Casey, go.
Yeah, I wanted to answer the gentleman's question over here about reading other books. I've read 1,640 books on JFK alone. And one of them was your buddy, okay, the DA of California, of Los Angeles, and I'll tell you what, I interviewed him in 1971, right after the Tate Bianca, La Bianca murders with Charles Manson. I had a chance to interview him, and we sat for about 2 hours, and I asked him, I said, but you believe that Charles Manson didn't shoot anybody at all? And he goes, no. So I said, you believe that this was a conspiracy? He goes, yes. And I said, but you have enough evidence to be able to prove the Robert Kennedy assassination as well as the John F. Kennedy assassination. But I said, those are all lone gunmen. And I said, how do you come up with something like that? And he goes, well, I look at the evidence. And I said, well, what evidence are you looking at in the Kennedy assassination and Robert F. Kennedy assassination? Bugliosi, if you look and you figure out where he got his material, it's all Warren Commission, Warren report. All he did was reiterate the entire Warren report. And if you look at the Warren report, what you really have to look at is the 26 volumes of information that feed into the Warren report. The 26 volumes of encyclopedic information will tell you the real story. 90% of that inside the Warren Commission documents and the hearings will tell you the story about what Brian was telling you right here and what Gary Shaw's been telling you and a lot of the other researchers over the past 60 years. Practically, I'm, without getting too much upset about this, but at the same time, you need to read. You need to read more than Bugliosi. You need to read the Warren Commission documents and hearings, and you will hear that the same thing Brian was telling you about who shot what at what particular time. What happened was they put it in a Warren report and said, this is what happened. Oswald did it. Oswald did it alone. Oswald didn't do it. He wasn't even there. He was on the 5th floor. Yeah. Oh, no, he was involved, but yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
What about it?
Oswald was found to be involved.
No, he wasn't. No.
Please don't ask a question until I bring you the mic.
Yeah.
That's the house
No, he
rule.
wasn't.
Okay, can she take her mask off? Because I can't hear what.
Well, I may be wrong, but I read the evidence, so that's what I'm saying. Oh, we're done. We're done. Yes, ma'am.
Is Miss Kennedy still alive?
Mrs. Kennedy is dead. Yes,
Died in
ma'am.
1994.
She's passed away.
Do you have any comment on the Parkland doctors that have recently come out?
I haven't seen it yet, but I've interviewed many of those doctors, and I can tell you there would be no reason for them to tell a different story in what they saw that day. But yes, that's probably the most accurate representation of what happened from the Parkland doctors' point of view. They saw the body immediately after the shots. Yes, sir.
I'm just going to piggyback on this lady's question here. It's always fascinating when you watch the interviews with Malcolm Perry and with Jim Carrico, who were the first doctors there. Every one of them, each one of them says, this was a shot from the front. They all point, here. Not one of them ever says anything about the bullet coming from the back.
The only thing they said about the back was it was blown out the size of a small grapefruit.
Exactly. And these gentlemen have nothing to gain by not giving them an accurate
absolutely
depiction.
not.
And so I obviously think to this gentleman over here talking about Vincent and all the other things, if you just look at the people that are impartial, that had nothing, no skin in the game either way, they're very consistent. And
I would believe a doctor over an eyewitness in Dealey Plaza, hands down. They're medically trained. They know what they're looking at. Yes, sir.
I read somewhere, I don't know who wrote it, that President Kennedy had made a statement he was going to take the government off the Federal Reserve System.
That's right. Yeah.
And that aggravated a lot.
Yeah, that made a lot of people mad. That's just added to the list of people that were out to get him.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. With as well organized as your scenario has it, and you know they've got 6 or 8 different teams and this and that, as a tactician, how would you have done it differently? Because it seems like there would have been much better ways and places and times to accomplish this, rather than having half a dozen different sniper nests and that sort of thing involved.
The reason there were so many is because, like I said at the beginning, it had to happen. They were going to take whatever means whatever it was going to take, they were going to kill him. And if it took 5 teams or 4 teams or 11 teams, it was going to happen. And as the answer to the other part of your question, what I would change different, I wouldn't change a thing because it worked. Why reinvent the wheel? It worked. Yes, sir.
You said Roscoe White, right? That's your book?
Yes.
Do you think James Files was one of the shooters?
Don't get me started on James Files. No, James Files, I think, is a liar. He's in prison, and he supposedly has nothing to do but listen to other people tell stories and read books, and I don't believe him. Here's a quick story about James Files. James Files was a convict who was arrested for some offense and put in prison, and then all of a sudden, about 10, 15 years ago, he comes forward and says, I was the one shot President Kennedy behind the fence. How old were you? I was 17. Okay. What were you doing? Well, I was a chauffeur for the mob, and then all of a sudden, the day of the assassination, they called me and said, hey, can you step in for this guy? Our shooter has got a cold or something. Can you step in? Oh, sure, I can do that. Well, what I did was I watched it with the audio on my TV, and I had just, like a month before, had come back from an advanced interrogation school, Reed Interrogation School, where we read body language and nonverbal cues of deception. This guy has nothing but deception in his voice. So I turned the audio down and just watched his face. He's lying. The only thing he said was true. He's in prison. His name is James Files, which really isn't his real name. So he's in prison. That's the only truth he said. Yes.
I wonder is there someone, is the mafia responsible? Is Johnson responsible? Do you have
Keep
a
going.
theory on
Keep going.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The mob had the connection to Jack Ruby. Jack Ruby was connected to the mob, and they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. My scenario is that Oswald was supposed to get killed in the book depository by some hero cop. And when he got away, they all went, oh, what now? What does he tell? Excuse my language. What is he telling these cops? So now they have to get rid of him. He's in police custody. We can't walk in there and kill him. Hey, we got a guy who knows every cop in town. Let's get Jack. Jack, you'll be a hero. Okay. So they bring Oswald out. Jack steps up. Boom, it's over with. You're a hero. Oh, you're going to get the death penalty. He got the death penalty because they injected him with cancer, and he died in jail before his appeal could go through.
I want to ask one question. Eugene Brady was in the Daltex building.
Yes.
He was apprehended by the Dallas police
Yes.
as he was running out the door.
Well, yeah.
And then he says, he gives them a fake ID and a fake name, and they ask him a few questions, let him go.
Yeah.
He was closely connected to Carlos Marcello, and that's documented. And Brady was staying at the Cabana Hotel,
right,
where Ruby was at Thursday night before the assassination.
Right.
Any connection?
Yeah, it's a big connection. The Cabana Hotel was the hub. That's where everybody was at. That and the Adolphus, I think, was the other control point. Everybody who was involved. We meet at these places. Yes, yes, sir.
Did you know an officer by the name of Robert Rowe?
I do. Yeah.
Did he recently pass away?
I think he did.
Yeah.
Yes.
I met him in 1969. I'm sorry. 30-year anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And we just started talking about it. He gave me the scenario of the A-Team, as was done on
Yeah.
television, all
Yeah.
the different groups. And he told me about silencers on the rifles. I never will forget because there were a lot of people down there in 1993, excuse
Yeah.
me. And I asked him for a business card. He reached down under his socks and pulled it out. I said, why do you keep your billfold down there? He says, do you realize how many pickpockets there are in this crowd?
Did he have white socks on by any
Yes,
chance?
he did.
Yeah, I've talked to Robert a few. The law enforcement didn't
Oh, he's
tell
great.
you anything.
He was
you know.
allegedly down there
Yeah.
in the Texas theater
Yeah,
and watched him bring Oswald out.
yeah. He says he was there. I don't know.
I
wouldn't-
understand. There's
I
a
don't
little
know.
bit of embellishment everywhere.
Yeah.
Couple more questions.
Okay,
comments.
good. I love questions.
Do you have anything to say?
I mean, the actions of Lee Harvey Oswald after the shooting, it just seems like it brings forth a lot of guilty actions.
Like what?
Mainly, he came down from the depository, he went to a bus stop, got on the bus.
Was that guilty? Why is
No.
it? How's that guilty?
Let me finish. It's not guilty.
Okay.
He got off the bus, went back to his boarding house, got a gun and a jacket.
How do you know that? How do you know he got a gun at the rooming house? How do you know he didn't
Based
have it
on
with him
the-
before? I'm just playing devil's advocate. How do we know that? You don't know that. Anyway, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, he evidently shot Officer J.D. Tippett with a gun. I mean, where did he
How do
get
you know that?
There were witnesses at the scene on
Really?
10th Street.
Can you name them?
Not by word, right?
Okay.
Not by,
Do you know what they said?
yes.
Helen Markham was one. Akila Clemens was one.
Okay, so why,
And they all saw different people. They didn't see Oswald. Helen Markham was taken to the. You're shaking your head. Let me answer this. Helen Markham was taken to the police station. She was a half a block away when Tippett was supposedly was shot by somebody, and they were taking her to a lineup. And they asked her 5 times, "Do you see anybody in this lineup you've ever seen before?" No. Oswald was the number 2 guy. 5 times they asked her. She hadn't seen anybody in the lineup. Finally, Jim Lavelle says, "Was there a number 2 man there?" "Yeah." "Well, that's him." That's not a lineup
so
identification.
when they captured him and got the gun from him, didn't the ballistics match the bullet?
No,
in
they
the
did
officer?
not.
They did not?
No, they did not. There were 4 shell casings found at the Tippett scene. 2 were Western Winchester and 2 were Remington. So that's either 2 shooters using 2 different manufacturers of weapons or one guy shooting 2 different boxes of shells. Where's the rest of the shells that Oswald had? They were in a box of 50. Where's the other 20 or other 45?
The bullet did not match
That's right.
that hit Tippett.
That's right.
That doesn't make sense.
It does.
Let me ask
Well, it does
devil's-
match. I'm
Let
sorry.
me ask a devil's advocate question. If I left the library right now and got on a bus and went home and left y'all here, that would be, somebody would be asking, what the heck was that about? I mean, he left his job. Why would he?
He wasn't the only one left.
He wasn't?
He wasn't. There was 40-some people that couldn't get back in the building, and when they did the roll call, half the people that work in there were not in the building. Well, you need to read a little more. That's what I'm saying. That's all I can ask of you is read more.
Anyways, I had.
I'm not going to read Bugliosi's book. I'm sorry. I've got other things to do.
Is there anybody who hadn't asked a question yet? In the back. I want to get to people who've not asked a question. And then after that, as long as he talks, I'll stay.
Did Oswald have white socks on when they apprehended him?
I don't know if we have a picture of him from the waist down. I don't think so. No, they weren't. Neither were sneakers. One guy that was in the cleanup crew had sneakers on.
Anybody who hadn't asked a question? Okay, you haven't. Okay, let me bring up Michael Hand.
Go, Gary. This is the tough question of the night right here. The guy that's been doing this for 60 years. If I can't answer this question, I'm in trouble.
I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just going to tell the people that day before yesterday, I watched the new movie, the documentary that's out. 7 of the Parkland doctors are speaking for the first time publicly. It was recorded in 2013, but they're now talking. It's about a 90-minute documentary. It will blow you away. It blows the Warren Commission completely out of the water. Completely. All of them, big exit wound in the back of the head. All of them, penetration wound to the throat. That means a shot from the front, at least 2. May have been more. But watch it, 90 minutes. It's got witnesses. I'm surprised that they ever made the movie. In fact, CBS is the one that made it, but it's on Paramount Plus. It's streaming, so you can watch it at any time if you're not afraid to. It's called JFK, What the Doctor Saw. I wrote a book with one of the doctors before he died, and he told me the same thing, same story. So the Warren Commission was a lie. I don't know why they lied except to cover up, people that you and I don't know anything about. Okay? Thank you very much.
Let me play devil's advocate with you. I'm one of 4 people who ever interviewed Dr. Perry. And now this was in 2002. He completely, 100% said he endorsed the Warren Commission.
The doctors that are in this program that I'm talking about talk about that very thing. And they were all coerced and warned not to say anything contrary to what the Warren Commission was saying. Period. Case closed.
Now, Dr. McClellan was here, and he made it very clear he didn't agree with the Warren Commission. So I interviewed 2 doctors with 2 different opinions. Now we know some other information. You look like you have a question.
Come on, Chris, you know you have a question. Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, I just...
there's a few more.
Okay, there's one down here in front.
By the way, I like the dialogue. I don't take any position professionally on who's right or wrong. We've had tomorrow night, you'll hear both sides of what he thinks. We've had several people who are Warren Commission people here. This has been an interesting dialogue.
What pissed everybody off that they wanted JFK dead?
I'm sorry, dear, I didn't hear what you said.
What ticked everybody off that they wanted JFK dead?
That's the $1 million question.
Another book for another time.
No, well, I give it to you real quick. Vietnam, the banking system, oil, I said Vietnam, civil rights, U.S. Relations with Russia, you name it.
Bay of Pigs?
Bay of Pigs, Cuba, you name it. If it's a list, he's on the list. That's why. And it's a lot safer to eliminate a leader rather than a ballot. You use a bullet. That's how it works. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
My question's a little bit off subject a little bit, but I was just curious if you had any thought about his son, JFK Jr., and his airplane crash.
You know, the only thing I know is I was asleep in my bed, and my wife, who gets up at the crack of dawn, rushed in to tell me one day, "You've got to wake up. John Kennedy's been killed." I already know that. No, John Kennedy Jr. Oh, no, not another one. I don't know. All I know is there was some there's always a controversy and a conspiracy aspect. I don't know. I really never studied it. I'm too busy with one guy. I don't want to start another one.
Now, I have a question, something I learned tonight. Winston Smith was here 10 years ago. He's now passed away. His father was an attorney representing Ruby. He claimed that Ruby told him privately, as a lawyer client, that Johnson was a target. And I found it interesting, the first thing that Johnson asked Hoover, was I a target?
Yeah.
It's almost like he knew.
No, it's all I know is what he told Hoover on the phone transcripts. But, when you eliminate the first guy, you've got to know in advance what the second guy is going to do. And if the second guy is going to be on your side, you don't want to hurt him. In fact, there's photographs in Dealey Plaza as the motorcade is under fire when Johnson is not visible in his in the three cars back because Jack Youngblood, the Secret Service agent assigned to Johnson, has already covered up Johnson before he even made the full turn onto Elm Street. So now we're going to protect Johnson.
I only know this because I can only say this because he's passed away, but I had a relative that was in bootlegging back in the 20s and 30s, and a tunnel network was built underground between the railroads to the hotels to bring in the booze for the guests, which they served in clubs, and they had no windows on the doors, and it locked from the inside.
Yeah.
So have those tunnels played any kind of?
I wouldn't be able to get a guess on that one.
Oh, see, what he was talking about were the storm sewers.
Yeah, the storm sewers are different than a tunnel.
Hotel to the railroads.
To them? Okay.
If the coordinators told me, if I'm a member of the team, and go, okay, Edwards, you're going to be in the sewer. No, wrong. I got claustrophobia. I'll be up on a roof, or I'll be on a fence line or whatever, but I'm not going in no tunnel. Yes.
About a year ago, there was some report that the CIA acknowledged they were involved with the assassination. Can you comment?
I don't know anything about that one, but that doesn't surprise me. But see, here's the thing. Everybody's all excited about these documents that are being released a little bit at a time. There's millions of documents that'll probably never be released in our time. But the documents that are coming out, you've got to know 4 things. How long has the document been in there? Who wrote it? What does it really mean? And is it fake or real? Well, that document that says, Oswald was a CIA operative, it could have been put in there 10 years ago or 5 minutes before I opened the file. There's no way to know how long that thing's been in there. So I don't put a lot of stock in documents because there's nothing on paper is going to be telling me, yeah, we had an operation and we killed Kennedy, and here's the operatives, and here's where they were. They're not going to put that on paper. Nobody's going to write that down. We can't write it down. Plausible deniability, classic catchphrase of the CIA. I don't know anything about it. Nope, didn't concern me. I didn't do it. I don't know anything about it.
We are on the last 2 weeks of putting a book together called The Admitted Assassin. It's about the Roscoe White story. Roscoe White was a Dallas police officer who was on the grassy knoll behind the picket fence. His son found his father's diary. And in 1982, Ricky White read the diary, and in that diary, his father admitted in his own hand that he shot President Kennedy from behind the picket fence. That diary was confiscated. That's not the right word. The FBI stole the diary from Ricky's possession, and we'll never see. That's where the same place that Beverly's film is. We'll never see it.